Trucker Dump, episode 140. Well, we're back from a wee bit of a hiatus, so instead of a normal topic, we're going to catch up on listener feedback. We'll hear from people looking into a trucking career, and we'll discuss LTL versus OTR, automatics versus manuals, Australian and military trucking, laughable rules, and of course, lots of hate mail about my tailgating episode. Those are always fun. We've also got over 3 months of news to catch up on. Trucking companies in trouble, and California causing trouble, of course. Recalls, new ALD stuff, new legislation, service dogs, truck booting, and lots more. This episode is sponsored by Volvo Trucks USA. Check them out at volvotrucks.us.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey there, Trucker Dumpers. Welcome back. For those of you new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I'm a 22-year trucker, freelance writer, and author of 2 trucking ebooks, Trucking Life and How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job. Learn more about both books and the 25% off of the combo pack at abouttruckdriving.com. And a shout out to Timothy B. Heron, who left an iTunes review about the podcast that said, very well thought out, great information, and the host isn't a snore. Well, that's something. Anyway, thanks for that, Tim. And hey, while I might not be a snorer, I am kind of sick right now. So if my voice sounds a little bit different, you'll know why. Although hopefully my fancy pants new software will fix that. That's what it's supposed to do. We'll see. All right, I guess we should address the elephant in the room, which is the hiatus I have been on since September. Whew. Well, Halloween and Thanksgiving have both passed, so I hope you had good holidays. And if I don't get editing on this podcast soon, Christmas will pass, and that'll make it a trifecta. Anyway, here's the deal. I was helping the evil overlord with some school stuff. She is in school trying to go back to college to be what? I'm not sure yet. Possibly hospital administration or something like that. But she needed some help in a political science class, and I was there to help her. And since she is going back for the betterment of our family situation and just to make her life better and having a better job, then I felt it was my obligation to help her when she needed it. Also, she was also having a Microsoft Office class, and I used that program extensively, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that kind of stuff for the small business that I run doing this podcast and stuff. So I had an opportunity to learn that too, right along beside her. So I kind of took that class along with her. Now, before anybody thinks this is cheating, she did most of the work on on the tests and stuff for the Microsoft Office stuff and for the political science stuff. We did do a lot of that together, but here's the thing. The way I see this is colleges make you take lots of stupid courses that you don't care about and are never going to need, all for the sake of making you a well-rounded person. You know what? She's 48 years old. She doesn't need to be well-rounded. She's got her thoughts in order. She knows what she is. Okay. So don't try to cram art history down her throat. She doesn't care. Don't try to cram music history down her throat. Doesn't care. Definitely don't try to shove political stuff down her throat because she really doesn't care about that. So all the classes she has needed for like anatomy and physiology, which is the hardest class ever to take in the medical industry. Anybody will tell you that. Straight A's, no problem whatsoever. She's had medical terminology. She's had intro to physics. She's had all these other chemistry, all these classes done all by herself, straight A's. So I do not feel bad about helping with a stupid political science class. And for the record, it was stupid. Actually, I did learn a little bit, but the teacher took that course way too seriously and just way too much work for a simple prerequisite class. Anyway, I'll quit ranting about this because I could go on forever about that class. Ugh. The other reason is that, my job. Man, I tell you what, everybody keeps telling me that it's going to slow down in the fall, especially October, November, December. Well, you know what? It has slowed down for some. They've actually laid off 3 people out of the facility that I work out of. But boy, the rest of us, that's just kept us busy, busy, busy. I know some of the other terminals are not quite as busy as we are, but boy, the one I'm out of is just kicking it. I mean, I'm still getting, 2,900, 3,000 miles a week, and lots of time on the clock. It's just, just busy, busy, busy. I'm not complaining. I'm really enjoying it. It's much better than being laid off. That's for sure. And another thing, I mentioned the holidays earlier. This is one thing I'm really liking about, I like lots of things about this LTL job compared to over the road, but one thing is that we get paid for holidays, and not just like Thanksgiving or Christmas, but we also get paid for Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, or Christmas Eve and Christmas. And, even better, we get like a premium pay if we're out either one of those days, even if it's like an hour on Christmas Eve. If we don't get in till 1 a.m. or something like that, we get a premium for doing that. It's really a sweet deal to actually be celebrating, to actually be guaranteed pretty much to be home on those days, because they don't want to pay, extra premium for holidays. And so you're guaranteed to be home on those days, and you're getting paid to do it, which is the first time in my life, in my trucking career, that I've ever been paid for holidays. So anyway, just another benefit of LTL over the road. Told you I wouldn't be promoting that all the time, but seems I'm going to. So anyway, that explains the hiatus. Hope you're okay with it. And I really, really appreciate all you sticking with me and understanding how the schedule of a trucker works, and that I sometimes get delayed on this stuff. And I also appreciate Volvo Trucks for sticking with me on this and giving me some leeway. Hopefully we'll be back to podcasting once a month like normal, or close enough. You know what I mean. All right. Well, the hours of service commenting period was extended by 14 days, which took it out to October 21st. If you heard the last little flash episode that I put out in October, you'll know that was the case. I hope you all got your comments in. I can't wait to hear what comes from this, and I hope everything kind of goes through the way it is. Well, except for the changes that I suggested, of course. I'd like to see those made, but we'll see how that goes. If you're interested in those changes that I mentioned, that was episode 139 of Trucker Dump. Just go to abouttruckdriving.com and check that out, or look that up in your podcatcher, whatever you use. Overcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever. So anyway, I guess we should get on with the news, huh? Because we've got a lot of it, 3 months to catch up on. So let's get started. Okay, I guess the first thing we need to focus on is the big story in the news right now, one that you've all heard about and quite frankly has been blown out of proportion a little bit as far as drivers go. This is Celadon filing for bankruptcy. Lots of people have said that the drivers were stranded and all that stuff, and apparently that is not really the case. So anyway, let's back up a bit. Celadon apparently was involved in this scandal. Basically, they were audited by a third party, and there were found major discrepancies in the company's reports. And Celadon later admitted that it had overstated its income by as much as $250 million in 2014, 15, and 16. Apparently, the way they were doing this was it was a scheme where they were selling used trucks at an inflated price, and then they were buying them back at those inflated price. That was a way to keep from recording losses on equipment sales. So anyway, they got busted for this and, had to file bankruptcy. Anyway, apparently, as far as the drivers go, they were saying that the fuel cards were initially shut off, which is almost always what happens when these, when these trucking companies go under, like Falcon and like Arrow back in the day. The trucking company gets in trouble, the fuel card companies hear about it, and they shut the fuel cards off immediately, and now the drivers have no way to get back, and the company has no way to help them. Or they probably do, but they don't. And they don't help. Anyway, apparently that's what happened this time. The fuel card was shut off immediately, but apparently that was rectified pretty quickly. I talked to one of my coworkers just a couple days ago, and he said he saw a Celadon truck out on the road driving around. So apparently he's getting back to whatever terminal they're sending him back for, and he is, getting his fuel paid for and all that stuff. So that's a good thing. At least they are not stranding them this time around. And there's more good news about this thing. As bad as the scandal can be, at least the drivers aren't getting shafted this time around. Anyway, both these stories I'm commenting on were found in overdriveonline.com, of course. And this one says that court allows Celadon to pay $5.4 million in owed driver wages. Great. Finally, a judge, I'm going to name her because she's cool. Her name is Karen Owens. She's a U.S. bankruptcy judge, and she said that it was okay for Celadon, which, by the way, this was Celadon's idea, to actually pay $3.9 million in owed compensation to drivers and $528,000 to its independent contractor drivers. There was also another $1 million for so-called termination bonus program, which nobody is sure what that means. Probably a bonus for the bigwigs. But anyway, I didn't know this, but I found out later on that in most of these bankruptcy cases, the judge actually rules in favor of like the big companies. So like Pilot Flying J would be paid for their fuel first, or Goodyear for their tires, or something like that. But in this case, she says pay their drivers first. And like I said, this was Celadon's intent. They filed to do this so they could take care of their drivers first. So while it does suck that two guys ruined it for Celadon, at least they are taking care of their employees. Well, former employees, however you want to look at it. Anyway, they're getting it done, and they're doing it in, I guess, the best way possible. At least, like I say, they're not Arrow, and they're not leaving drivers out there stranded at truck stops, ripping tires off of trucks and selling them to get their pay or to get home, for fuel costs. Anyway, it's a messed up situation, but hey, at least we've addressed that and it's out of the way. Man, what a horrible way to start the podcast, huh? But hey, we usually start with recalls, and those are bad too. Well, don't let it be ever said that a trucker dump goes by without some recalls in it. And here we go again. Overdriveonline.com. We got 4 of them. Now, granted, this has happened since our last podcast, so keep that in mind. It's not quite as bad as it sounds. All right, first we got a couple of Western Star recalls. The first is for 2016 to 2020 Western Star 4900 and 5700 tractors. This is an issue where the sleeper cab vent windows would detach from the truck. Apparently, they had improper adhesive on the windows. You know what? Remember this? This affected Volvo not too long back, and I think it affected Freightliners for a while. Apparently, there was just a really, really, really bad batch of adhesive out there, and I guess everybody got it. Unfortunate. But anyway, they are going to fix the problem. Check out the link in the show notes here to this article, and you can find out all the information. There's a 1-800 number and the recall number and all that good stuff. The other recall from Daimler is also Western Star for 2020 Western Star 4700 tractors. Apparently, the steering shaft may have been installed properly. And since steering is very important, you probably want to get that taken care of. Apparently, there is a little over 1,300 units affected by this. And the previous, by the way, was about 2,700 units. So go check those out. Get that stuff fixed. Next up, approximately 2,200 Volvos. That'd be a 2020 Volvo VNL and VNR tractors, but only the ones that are equipped with Shepherd HD94 gear variants, whatever that means. Apparently, the steering gear mounting fasteners might not have been tightened properly. That could lead to your steering gear loosening. And again, steering's important, so head on over and get that fixed. And again, all these details are in the show notes. Well, the link to the article, so you can get the details in the article. Whatever. You know what I mean. And finally, we got one from Packer. Approximately 248 models. Well, it's kind of specific, isn't it? Maybe it's 248. Maybe it's 247. Maybe it's 249. Anyway, these are on 2020 Peterbilt 579s with sleepers. It says that here's this word again, how do you say that? The conspicuity tape? Conspicuity. I guess that's right. Anyway, it may be installed in the wrong location, affecting the vehicle's visibility to others. I'm guessing this tape is that stripy tape, the red and white stripy tape. Your guess is as good as mine. Anyway, we're done with recalls. That is the most important fact I just gave you. All right, how about some ELD talk for the next one? This is from overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes. By the way, I say that every time, and you should know that those show notes can be found in your podcast app. Just search around for them, or you can go to abouttruckdriving.com, search for TD140, and you can find them right there. They'll be at the bottom of the blog post. All the links and everything will be right there for you. Anyway, this article is called Goodbye AOBRD, Shifting Loyalties, Yard Moves, and Other Challenges. Basically, the whole beginning of this article is talking with the CEO of Nussbaum and some people from Schneider, and they're talking about different systems they've used and stuff like that. Not really interested in any of that stuff, but if you are, have a look at it. What I wanted to point out was I wanted to get down here to this yard move and stuff like that. Now, as we've spoken about before, the main difference between these ELDs and the AOBRDs is that any time that truck is moving more than 5 miles per hour, it's going to log it as driving time. The thing is, all drive time has to be assigned somewhere. Now, I've verified this on my unit. We've been on the ELDs for a little while. They kicked it over in September to try to get us ready for it by the deadline, which is December 16th today. So when I go back into work tonight, that ought to be fun. Anyway, hopefully we're prepared for it. Although I'd say we're not, because our e-logs are still malfunctioning. Last week, a couple of different times I took off driving, and when I stopped like 2.5 hours later, I looked, and after 2 minutes of driving, it had put me back on the off-duty line and had not given me any warning whatsoever. So I had to alter that and everything. Anyway, hopefully they get all that stuff fixed, because, man, it's a pain in the butt. Anyway, I will verify that if you stay under 5 miles per hour, it will not kick you to the driving line. But boy, we've already seen reports and people on Facebook and Twitter complaining about trucks idling around the yard and, it taking them 10 minutes to go around a Walmart parking lot. So, it sucks, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Anyway, and part of the problem too is these on-duty moves, like these on-duty yard moves, those do not count towards brake. So in the future, if we get these new proposed hours of service rules coming in, and how they say that anything that is not counted as driving, any kind of brake, even if it's on duty, not driving, such as yard move, that kind of a thing, or fueling or whatever will be able to be used towards a 30-minute break, towards the 8-hour thing. So if that goes into effect, a lot of this won't matter quite as much, but at least that's what I'm seeing on my end. Anyway, this over 5 mile an hour thing is the big thing that everybody thought was going to be a huge problem, especially like if you are at a shipper or receiver, you're in the middle of your break, your 10-hour break, and they tell you, hit dock 8 over there. Well, dock 8's, on the other side of the building, and you've got to drive around there. Now, do you creep less than 5? Well, apparently you have to. And here's why. And in the beginning, I had heard, and I think I reported on this podcast, that if you are on the on-duty yard move status, that this line would be a different color on your e-log. And I can verify that that is true. It's like a little striped line, basically. But the thing we were unsure of was if that was going to count against a 10-hour break. Would an on-duty yard move actually count against a break? So, your 10 hours would be split up and you'd have to start a new 10 hours. Or maybe if you're in a sleeper berth for 8 and then you had to move, you'd have to do a split sleeper berth or something like that. Well, I wrote to the FMCSA to figure this out because I couldn't find it anywhere online. And they wrote me back. And sure enough, they did confirm that a on-duty yard move will, in fact, go towards breaking up a 10-hour break. It is considered on-duty time, which by law screws up your break. So keep that in mind. I have a feeling what's going to happen is most truck drivers are just going to switch to off-duty PC time while they're on property and move that trailer into a dock door and then go back to sleep and go back into the sleeper berth. Technically, that's not what the personal conveyance is for, but I have a feeling that's going to be the only way you can get around it. I'm not promoting this. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's legal. I'm just saying I have a feeling that's what some truckers are going to do. And I've already talked to one who did exactly that. Not surprised. They need to loosen this up a bit somehow. Maybe they need to have an off-duty yard move. Maybe they need to add that. Whatever. That on-duty yard move thing is great for them, not so great for the truck driver. Surprise, surprise. Now, I'd like to clear up one other thing. There's a big misconception. I've talked to lots of drivers who are unsure about this. They have said that there is, after December 16th and the new rules kick in, that you will not be able to edit the drive line. Now, according to this article, that is not exactly true. What it says is that the drive line cannot be deleted. It can only be reclassified or reassigned. Basically, you can only annotate it. Now, I don't know if that means you can just call it something else, make a remark in there and say what it was. That's usually what annotation means. Or does it actually mean you can change the drive line? Say, you go over 5 miles an hour and it kicks you on the drive line for 30 seconds, and you can go in and change that. I don't think that's the case, but it says you can reclassify it here. So I still don't think we have an answer on what exactly this means, unfortunately, because it would be nice to know with the deadline coming right around the corner. Anyway, I just thought I would point that out. But there is also a misconception saying that the companies will not be able to edit your logs at all. And that is not true. A lot of people say the driver is the only one that can edit the logs now. Not true. Both can edit the logs. The difference is you have to be notified of it and you have to make a remark on it. So if we make a change, we have to make a remark as to why we're doing that change. And the company now, which is most important, they can't make changes in the background. So they can't they can't take away some of your drive time or give you some extra time so you can deliver a load on time and not tell you, because that was happening. As a matter of fact, another article I saw said that that's why 33% of the larger carriers did not want these new ELDs, is because they could make changes in the background without telling the driver about it, which is kind of crappy. So now the way it works is if they make it on the back end, by the way, I can verify this on my unit in my truck right now. If they make changes on the back end, it sends forth the message and says, the log department has made this change. Do you confirm or reject it? And the thing is, this is where the driver is responsible. You have to say reject or confirm. And if you reject that time and you actually did it, that's going to get you busted. So I do know a driver at our company who just rejects everything that comes through, and some of it is legitimate. For instance, if you're out of the truck and, somebody moves your truck, maybe a yard guy or something like that, that happens to us all the time. Every time, I leave the truck and another city driver has driven it for a while, then he's logging on his log, but then there's usually a yard guy somewhere in between there that will move a truck or trailer out of a door, use that truck for whatever reason. And so when I log on every day, there will be some time says, hey, this truck was moved. Did you do this? You look at the time on it and you say, no, I did not, unless you did. So anyway, I got a friend who's been rejecting all this time, and I keep telling him, you're going to get busted one of these days. But anyway, I can't talk any sense into him. Anyway, it is the driver's responsibility. So just so you know. Anyway, there was one other comment in here I had on Nussbaum Transportation. Their CEO said something that was kind of funny. He was saying that he says this has helped driver abuse, having these new ELDs. He says we're seeing less times where a shipper knocks on a driver's door at 2 a.m. and says, move this trailer for me, when a driver's only 6 hours into his break. Now, maybe they're seeing that, but I have a really hard time believing that any shipper or receiver has cared about our hours, because why would they? I mean, they never have before, and we've told them we've been out of hours. So anyway, I just found that kind of amusing. And to back me up on that, here's another overdriveonline.com article by Matt Cole. And it is about the ATRI survey that was done recently with drivers. And of course, drivers are reporting longer, more frequent detention at shippers and receivers. What I tell you. Again, this does not surprise any one of us out here. They don't care. They probably never will until, unfortunately, the government gets involved and make them start caring. Sad. Oh, well, it is what it is. And hey, speaking of personal conveyance, our next article is also from overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes. It's one of these awesome trucking law articles. Boy, I'm really looking forward to these each time they come out. They're always so informative. So if you're not subscribed to overdriveonline.com, go check it out and get subscribed. This one is written by Paul Taylor, who's a managing partner of Truckers Justice Center. I'll give you his details at the end of this if you got any questions. So anyway, this one is called What Works as Personal Conveyance? This is a big question in the industry. Recently, the FMCSA put out a statement saying that they kind of left this rule open to interpretation, which is both good and bad. I mean, it gives a trucker some leeway, but it also gives a cop some leeway if he wants to nail you for something. So anyway, let me just address some of the first ones. Of course, we all know what personal conveyance is. It's the personal use of a commercial motor vehicle while you're off duty, and only if you're not responsible for performing work for the carrier at that time. We pretty much all know that. Now, here's one that I honestly didn't know the answer to. It says, how far may I drive on PC? And this says you can drive as many miles or as many hours as you want, provided you're really off duty. So, if you've got a 3-hour drive home from the terminal and you're bobtailing, I don't know if this counts for taking empty or not. Companies do have their own rules, so they may have a driving limit also. I know back when I worked for my last company, they had a 20-mile per day limit. So you could go 10 miles out and 10 miles back, but you always had to end up at the exact same location. Of course, they lifted that rule now that you don't have to end up at the same location. So maybe it's 20 now. I don't know. I don't work there anymore. Anyway, just check with your carrier, or if you're an owner operator, well, you're on your own. I guess you make up your own rules. I mean, if you think about it, you are your own boss, so you know whether you're truly off duty or whether you're not. Don't be naughty. Here's one. May I pass the terminal to make a delivery knowing I will run out of hours and then record time deadheading to the terminal as PC? And you cannot do this because you're going back to the terminal for business purpose. That is if they directed you back there, I suppose. I guess if the terminal just happens to be the closest place to that shipper where you run out of hours, or that receiver where you run out of hours, I guess technically going PC back would be to the terminal. Yeah, I think it would be considered a PC because it is the closest place, and that's what the guidelines say. You can personal conveyance to the closest place. Now, here's another one that's often asked. And the question is, may I record driving time as PC when the carrier's directing me to travel in the direction of my next pickup? And the answer is no. This is for business purpose. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but here's what I see happening. Say you deliver at a location and it takes them 6 hours to unload you. And now you don't have another load yet, but you call your company and they say, well, we think you're probably going to pick up over here to the city to the east. Well, now you know to start heading that way instead. Technically, you're not under a load, but technically they have also told you which way you're probably going to be picking up. So you would head that way for your PC. So again, I guess you just have to tell the cop, I don't know where I'm going next. I just went to the closest location I know of. Interesting. Again, don't throw any of this on me. I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't listen to me. Do what your carrier says. And I'm not going to go into all of these, but those are some of the major ones. There's also some stuff about what are your rights if your carrier tries to make you drive and use personal conveyance time when you're not supposed to, things like that, places you can call, people you can talk to, and ways you can get reimbursed if they fire you or stuff like that. So anyway, check out this link in the show notes, overdriveonline.com. And again, subscribe to their email newsletter while you're over there. It's really cool. And quite frankly, this whole segment would be impossible without it. Well, it wouldn't be impossible, but it would suck a lot worse. And oh yeah, I told you I would give you Paul Taylor's contact information. You can reach him at 855-943-3518 or at truckersjusticecenter.com. All right, so up until now, we've been singing the praises of how the Volvo Trucks interiors are designed with driver comfort in mind. Well, this new Volvo Dynamic Steering feature, which is available on the 2020 VNL and VNR series, is continuing on those lines. You're just going to have to see the videos for this one because it's really cool, but quite honestly, it's a bit hard to grok without seeing it in action. Head on over to volvotrucks.us to see a short video that explains how it works. I'll also include a link to Volvo's YouTube page in the show notes where there are 5 more videos that go into more detail. So, exactly what is Volvo Dynamic Steering? Volvo Dynamic Steering is designed to make the job just a little easier for drivers like you. The strain on your back, neck, arms, and shoulders is reduced because steering requires less effort. It compensates for side winds, removes road vibrations, and makes backing simpler thanks to the automatic return to center. It's like nothing you'd ever seen before. Seriously. Volvo Dynamic Steering. Enjoy driving again. Learn more at volvotrucks.us and be sure to check out their YouTube page too. Links in the show notes. And thanks to Volvo Trucks for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. All right, next up we have an article by Matt Cole on overdriveonline.com. This is 4 different bills that are being presented to Congress for vote. Boy, I love these kind of articles. They're short and sweet and to the point and easy to understand, which is kind of ironic considered none of my articles are such thing. They're more like a meandering highway that runs through the backwoods. Of course, as with any bill, not everyone agrees with him and stands up to fight against him. In this case, it's the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, which, of course, is OIDA. Now, I don't agree with all their points on everything because they do defend owner-operators most of the time, and sometimes that doesn't align with the rest of, the company drivers. But in this case, I'm going to say they're pretty much right on target for most of this stuff. The first one is called the Stop Underrides Act. And what this is basically saying is that you're going to need an underride guard on all trailers with a gross vehicle weight of greater than 10,000 pounds, as well as single unit trucks with a gross vehicle weight greater than 10,000 pounds and a carriage that's more than 22 inches off the ground. So basically they're wanting front, side, and rear underguards on all trailers, basically. Of course, OIDA is saying, well, first off, not all trailers need this, like low boys and car haulers. You can't fit anything under those. And they're also saying there is no such thing as a front underride bumper, basically, on the market right now because, and they quote, because the concept lacks any practicality, which, of course, it does. Who's going to hit that thing? Unless the trailer's parked, of course, and there's no truck underneath it. Anyway, the second one is called the Cullum Owings Large Truck Safe Operating Speed Act of 2019. Yeah, that doesn't sound good, does it? Yeah, well, that's exactly what you think it is. It's, they want to speed limit all trucks to 65 miles per hour. Put the speed limiters on them. Anyway, OIDA says this would create speed differentials in 35 states, which is true. And, there's been research that shows there is no problem between, with having speed differentials, and there has been others that says that there is. And I think the one that is, and just as being truckers in general, and we see the difference and we see people flying around us when we're in our slow trucks, we know which one is right on that one. All right. The third one is the Safe Roads Act. And this one would require all commercial trucks to be equipped with automatic emergency braking systems, or AEBs. Now, OIDA is saying this is going to be way too costly. And, well, that may be the fact. For one thing, it would probably be hard to retrofit something like this. I'm not sure if that's even possible. Does that mean everybody's got to upgrade to brand new trucks? And, of course, I think these automatic emergency braking systems are going to be one of those things that's just standard on every truck eventually. But, there's a lot of truckers out there who do not want a newer truck. They want something older, especially because all the DEF problems and the emissions problems and stuff like that. They want to avoid that. So they have really old trucks. Good for them. But anyway, OIDA also says it's still a fairly relatively new technology, and it can create new challenges and dangers for drivers, such as false or unexpected system activation. And I know this to be true because Trevor, who also goes by Kool-Aid in the Slack group, said that he was driving down I-79, I believe it was, in West Virginia one day. He was passing this truck, and they were both on a corner, and for some reason that emergency braking system thought he was going to hit something, and it locked up the brakes on him, and he actually sideswiped that truck a little bit. Everybody was okay. There wasn't a whole lot of damage, which is amazing for probably going, 65, 70 mile an hour down a hill and two trucks touching. Vehicles touching is never a good thing. So, anyway, I know that's happened. And I have a coworker also at the company that I work for. And anytime it would rain or snow, it was detecting false collision, and it would also lock up the brakes on him. And he said, there's nothing quite like the feeling of driving along. You're perfectly comfortable. Nobody's out in front of you. Everything's fine. You're just relaxed, and all of a sudden your brakes just lock up on you. He says it just scares the crap out of you. You're just not expecting it, and after that, you're on edge, And once it happens once, you are on edge. And they finally had to take that back to the dealer and get a new bumper and a new system installed in that. Haven't heard from him back on whether it is fixed. He hasn't said anything, so I'm guessing it is. I'm sure we would have heard about it if it was. Anyway, this final one is just called the Insurance Act. And this would basically increase the liability insurance minimum for trucking companies from what it is now of $750,000 to more than $4.9 million. Oh, wow. Of course, OIDA says that, this is going to be way too costly. And I've heard owner operators say that would basically put them out of business because they can barely afford their insurance now. They also say that the current liability minimum, it covers damages in all but 0.06 of all crashes. That's less than 1% of all crashes are covered by the liability by the $750,000 that's in place now. So I don't see any point in this. Maybe it makes the public feel all warm and fuzzy, but who cares about that? What it really means is that guys like the Hammer in Indiana, which I listened to his podcast for a little bit just to kind of hear what it was about. And they say basically they go after the trucking companies because they are the most likely. For one, they have the biggest money, and they are most likely to give it up because they have an insurance policy and they know they can just go for the maximum. And if the maximum is $750,000 right now, he knows he can probably get all $750 just so the trucking company will just, make this go away. And what happens if it's 4.9 million? You think there's a lot of billboards with, truck accident lawyers on it now. Just wait. Oh boy. So basically, all of these things are really stupid ideas and they should not pass. And if you are the type of person that contacts your congressman, your House of Representatives, your senators, now's the time to do it because, man, none of these things are good. Anyway, kudos to OIDA for fighting this. Good luck with that. Hey, this next story, wow. I believe I saw this on Twitter. This is from the WBIR website. Link in the show notes. That is the NBC news station in Knoxville. And by the way, since I saw this on Twitter, let me mention, if you have a Twitter account and you have not used it in like the last 6 months or so, you need to get over and at least log in if you don't want to lose your username. Because apparently if you haven't used it in the last 6 months or so, if you don't get over there by December 11th and use the account, open it, access it, whatever, you don't have to tweet or anything like that. You just have to show some activity on it. But if you do not, they are going to delete your name and you're going to lose it, and it's going to make it available for somebody else. So, like I say, I'm not on Twitter that much anymore, but I have been paying attention to it still. By the way, I'm at Todd McCann on Twitter. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. You know, I just wanted to say that, right? All right. Anyway, this story, boy, I was happy to see this. I was so pleased. And I learned something. On Twitter, if you've ever heard me or followed me on Twitter, I have multiple times complained about the weird speed limits in Tennessee, especially around Knoxville. There was all these 55 mile an hour areas. And I was just like, this is just a speed trap. There's no point in it. It's stupid. Well, apparently there was a point in it. Apparently they had gotten to some air quality issues, and they have fixed this with these air scrubbers. Didn't know anything that was even possible, but apparently the air quality has increased much, much better. And also, apparently, I'm going to see how many times I can say apparently in one news segment here. Apparently, there is some kind of weird Tennessee law that says that they cannot make speed limits well below what people are actually doing, which I thought, okay, well, let's everybody go 75. But anyway, what this means is they are lifting the speed limits around Knoxville, at least certain parts of it. Now, I noticed it's not on all parts of it because I was hauling butt on 75 going south down towards Knoxville, and I was expecting, to be, higher speed limits, but it wasn't. Still 55 up there. I don't know why. It is hillier up there. It's a bit curvier up there, but I don't know. Still seems kind of pointless. But anyway, the changes are mostly on I-40 and on I-640, which is a little loop around. Okay. Basically, let me just give you the gist of this. Just be aware of it. When you go down there, I was so used to going 55 that I just was going 55. So I don't know how long this was going on before I actually, how slow was I going, for how long when I could have been going faster. Anyway, basically the highway west of town and 640 is all 65 mile an hour now. There's still one section of 60 mile an hour, which is right downtown, in between where the 640 loop comes around. And then when you head on out east towards I-81, that is actually up to 70 mile an hour, which, that's pretty awesome. So anyway, take advantage of those speed limits. I've heard that the new speed limit signs are up everywhere by now, so that's good. And last time I went through there, it looked like that was accurate. So hey, enjoy the new speed limits. Thank you, Knoxville. It's kind of funny. I was watching this video here on the site, and the reporter was saying that the average speed recorded there was between 67 and 72 mile an hour, even though the speed limit was 55. And to make a point about the last story that we talked about with the speed differentials, they also commented on it. The Tennessee DOT said the same thing, that there were higher accidents when there was a larger speed differential, and the accidents have already come down since they raised it back up. So there you go. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Congress. All right, moving on. Oh yeah, another one of these excellent trucking law articles from Overdrive. This one is written by Brad Klepper. He's the president of Interstate Trucker, which is a law firm dedicated to defending drivers, and he's also the president of the discount services firm Drivers Legal Plan. We've all heard of that. And I'll give you his contact information at the end of this article if you have any questions or any need for him. So anyway, this one is protecting yourself during a traffic stop. I'm just going to hit the highlights here. Basically, he says, just don't be a jerk. Be cooperative. Never admit guilt. Never fail to show up for a court date. And never just pay a ticket. Of course, he would say that because he's a lawyer who defends truckers, but he's got a good point. This is your CDL you're battling for, so you don't want a bunch of points on it. It's going to look bad on you, go on your record, and, might be harder to get a job the next time around. Trucking companies do look at that, citations and stuff like that. Anyway, he just says, remain calm, professional, treat the officer with respect. You're never going to win an argument with them, so don't try. It also says, do everything you can to put them at ease. Keep your hands in view, turn the interior light on, things like that. Now, I've gotten out of the truck before and walked back, and they don't like that necessarily. So I just will kind of open my door if I can, crack it and, just open a foot or so he can, look up in there and he can pull open the door real fast. Or I'll put my hands up on the, up on the windowsill. So he knows what's going on there. Of course, I haven't had a ticket in a really long time because I drive really, really, really slow trucks. Anyway, they also say, don't admit guilt. If he asks you how fast you're going, say, I'm not really sure. What do you think? Or, something like that. And always refrain from agreeing with whatever he says. And, anything that admits guilt, he can use against you. So don't do that. And he also says one of the best things you can do is right after the stop is over. Now, let me point this out. Right after the stop is over, hit the record button on your phone, like a voice memo app or on the video or whatever, and record a message, whether, like say, video, audio, whatever, and give the details of what happened, both before, during, and after the stop. And you can use this to refresh your memory later. He goes on to say the judicial system understands that data recorded at the time of the incident is more accurate than someone's memory much later. And I think we've all known that, heard that, on all the cop shows and stuff that, a person's mind doesn't often remember exactly what happened, and they're often way wrong when it comes to eyewitness stuff when you ask months or weeks later. So anyway, those are the highlights of that. If you want to contact Brad Klepper at his law firm here, the number is 800-330-3748. And you can also contact him at interstatetrucker.com or driverslegalplan.com. And again, thanks to Overdrive Online for these excellent trucking law articles. They come out about once a month, I think, which is just awesome. Because an informed trucker is an awesome trucker. And since you listen to this podcast to stay informed, that makes you awesome. Okay, next up, we've got fleetowner.com bringing you some bad news. Time to register with FMCSA's Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. Well, we all knew it was coming, and this new clearinghouse is going to be kicking in January. Employers will start checking it to see if drivers have ever refused a drug test or had a positive drug test. Unfortunately, it is one of these things that nobody wants to sign up for, but you kind of need to do it if you think you are going to ever need a new job at some point. You could wait until you need a new job, but it's unclear at this point how long it's going to take this all to kick in. Now, I did go and sign up for this. You do have to get a login.gov account, basically, and there's easy steps to do it. There's a link in the show notes here to this article, and it'll take you to the official website of this clearinghouse. And this clearinghouse is through the FMCSA, so although we don't much like them most of the time either, at least we know they're a legitimate thing. So anyway, this whole process took me about 10 minutes, and quite honestly, I did some extra steps in there to make sure that I had saved passwords and saved codes and stuff like that. But anyway, it's a really easy process. You just need to say that you're a driver. You need to give your contact information, verify your CDL, and then just go through the terms and conditions. check the button and say, okay. It was over in about 10 minutes. Like I said, could have been faster. If I wasn't super anal about things, but I am. So there we go. Anyway, like I said, nobody wants this, but it's coming. Face the facts. Nobody wanted ELDs, but they're here too. It is what it is. Again, this article was found on fleetowner.com and it was written by Joseph Evangelist. Go check that out. Speaking of drugs, hemp is a drug, right? Well, no, not really. Marijuana is, that comes from hemp, but that's beside the point. Anyway, this article is from overdriveonline.com, written by Matt Cole. And by the way, kudos to Matt Cole for this excellent pun. Quote, truck drivers have recently been caught in the weeds with legal battles over hemp transportation. You know, I'm just cheesy enough to enjoy a good pun. Way to go, Matt Cole. Anyway, apparently back in December, President Trump signed into law the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, basically known as the 2018 Farm Bill. All heard of that. And it legalized industrial hemp at the federal level. And it included a provision that makes it illegal for states to prohibit the interstate transportation of hemp and hemp products. So this went into effect on October 31st. So I guess in the past, truckers were kind of, well, caught in the weeds, basically. Sorry, I had to do that again. When they were caught transporting across state lines. I guess there was a case earlier this year where there was 3 truckers who were hauling in Idaho and they got busted for that. Well, apparently that's not illegal anymore. Although it does point out that you do need to make sure you're following the state's rules. For instance, if you're picking up hemp somewhere, you need to make sure you get a copy of the license of the grower. So you're making sure that you're transporting legal hemp. Things like that. So if you want more details, I know most of us aren't going to be hauling hemp anytime soon, but if you are one of those and you need more details on this, go to the link in the show notes, overdriveonline.com. And remember, truckers, you cannot smoke weed and drive a truck. Well, you could, but you'd be driving really slow, and that's pretty dangerous. That's so funny. Next up, the trucking industry wants the ladies. All right, this one I found on freightwaves.com, and it's written by John Gallagher, Washington correspondent. Boy, that sounds fancy. Anyway, it's called U.S. Senators Introduce Women in Trucking Bill. Basically, this bill would just create a Women of Trucking Advisory Board. And what their goal would be to identify ways trucking companies, trucking associations can get women involved in the trucking industry. And they're also going to be trying to find opportunities to enhance training, education, and outreach programs exclusive to women. Hey, this is good stuff. We all know that women are only 7% of the industry right now, which is way lower than, the normal workforce is about 47% of the labor force. 7% is pretty darn low. But there's also another stat that says female drivers have been shown to be 20% less likely to have an accident than men. So there we have it. Women are better drivers than men. I'll just say it. Well, it makes sense. They're far more cautious. They're not going to try to pull off that stupid move to weave in and out of traffic because they're more patient. All that good kind of stuff. Anyway, this is good news, but quite frankly, it's a little sad. What I mean by that is it's just a little sad that we have to have legislation to look into getting women into trucking. If these trucking companies, these trucking associations want to get women involved, which they should, why are they not doing it on their own? Why are they not doing it with their own initiatives? Why aren't they out there searching for ways to get women drivers to come to them? I mean, just recently, one of our Slack members, Gwen, who's a fairly new listener, she goes by Furiosa in our Slack group. Her trucking company did something really cool for her. She just left one company, she got her training in and everything, and she wanted to go flatbedding. So what did her flatbed company do? When they got her on board, they gave her all bright pink straps. How cool is that? I mean, it's just a little thing, but she was really impressed with it enough to show a picture of it and everything on Slack. So, it's little things like that. I mean, that's kind of a cheesy thing actually, but I loved it. I thought it was great. Pink straps. How cool is that? Now everybody who, is driving by are going, wow, look at the pink straps. And then they get up beside her and go, hey, look, a lady, flatbedder. That's awesome. So anyway, I'm just saying there's ways to bring women there has to be ways to bring women into your trucking company. And, like I said, just a little sad we got to have legislation to do it. Kind of reminds me of, getting delayed at the shippers and receivers. We shouldn't have to have legislation for that, but it's looking like that's what it's going to take in order to get it done because they just don't care. Anyway, link in the show notes to this article if you're interested. And again, that's on freightwaves.com. Okay, this next issue was brought up to me by driver Chris Mack. I had not heard of it. I asked my coworkers if they had heard of it, and they were like, where have you been? So, well, I don't know where I've been. I thought I'd been watching my news feeds and everything, but for some reason I had no clue this was going on. Anyway, this is the whole California owner-operator debacle thing that's happening. I put up a series of 3 articles, links to all of them in the show notes. They're all from overdriveonline.com, and they're all written by James Gillette. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but one of them was written by Todd Dills also. But anyway, here's the crux of it. If you are an owner-operator or a lease guy, you are not going to be able to run in California if you were leased on with another company. This new law is called Assembly Bill 5, and it could legitimately put owner-operators out of business in the state. Basically, there's something called an ABC test for determining whether a worker is an employee or a contractor. The most difficult part of this, apparently, is the B part of that, and that states that employers cannot contract workers that perform the same work as the business itself does. So, for instance, if a trucking company is a trucking company, they can't hire truckers to truck for them, which doesn't make any dang sense to me, but what do I know? I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, this could affect all kinds of other industries. It says it could hit Uber and Lyft drivers. It could do software coders, hairdressers, nurses, construction workers, dog walkers, and even exotic dancers, although I'm not sure how that would work. But anyway, I mean, what does the owner of the exotic exotic dance bar, if they dance, they can't hire other people to do it? I don't get it. Anyway, so this law takes effect January 1st. So basically all of these trucking companies are trying to get on top of this prime. They talked about in the article, they talked about Landstar, Swift and Knight addressed this earlier on. And basically, there's only a few options for these drivers. These lease guys can either sell their equipment. Sometimes the, company will take it back from them and become an employee, or they can go and get their own authority and then act as their own broker through that company if they want to stay there. Or their other option is move out of California, which honestly, to me, you know how I feel about California. I think that's probably their best option. But hey, if you're attached to California, you're attached to California. But anyway, this is kind of screwy. I don't really get the crux of it. I mean, I'd always heard that an independent contractor had to be somebody that isn't employed by anyone, or they have to be available to be employed by other people other than that one company. So if you're an independent contractor who only works for one company, you are an employee. But I'm not sure that's exactly what they're saying. But if you think about it, that's kind of what this is implying, because I mean, think about it. I got my friend driver Chris Mack, who works at Prime. He is a lease guy there. He cannot just go out and find his own loads. All of his loads go through Prime. So he's not sure what he's going to do about this yet. So it's just kind of screwy, and it's just like California to keep screwing things up. And guess what? And with just like everything else, when California starts something, everybody else feels like they need to be cool too and jump on the bandwagon. And that means New Jersey has started the same process. So they're saying, everybody's saying, you know, of course there's legal action against this and everything, and people are fighting it, and they're going to try to get the, what they're trying to do is get the contractor test, you know, the ABC thing. They're trying to get truckers exempt for this, the trucking industry exempt for this, so they will be able to continue to operate the way they can, because, you know, a company like Landstar's, you know, nothing but owner operators. So man, that's really going to screw with their business if, you know, they can't operate in California. And that's basically what they're saying. You cannot operate in California if you have this setup. So that's kind of screwy. But anyway, they're thinking this is probably going to make it all the way up to the Supreme Court at some point. And well, at that point, it will be decided for sure. That's the highest court in the land right there. I learned that in our political science class this semester. So anyway, link in the show notes to all of these stories. All right, let's go over to Transport Topics, which is ttnews.com. Eric Miller wrote a story called FMCSA to announce 2-year delay in implementing the ELDT rule. Wow, more stuff about ELDs? No, it's not at all. I was confused by this too. I thought, what's this ELDT rule? What's the T stand for? Well, apparently it has nothing to do with ELDs, which is just stupid in my opinion. Why would you name something and give it an acronym with an ELD in it, considering everything we're going through right now? Anyway, what this stands for is entry-level driver training. And so I guess they tried to set some formal guidelines into what is required to, you know, get your CDL license. And this was all supposed to kick into effect on February 7th, but apparently it's going to be delayed by up to 2 years because it just isn't ready. It's nowhere close. I don't know whether they're dragging their feet or what. This is something that they need to quit dragging their feet on, obviously, because training is just not good, as we're going to hear from another story and here in a little bit. You know, we've had these training issues for a long time with drivers not really having to go through a lot of training to get a CDL. And you can tell when they first hit the road by themselves, you can tell who they are out there on the road. So anyway, 2 years when it's going to be before this is, goes into effect. And we don't even know if it'll be effective when it does go into effect. Anyway, let's move on. That's depressing. Here's something that isn't depressing. TheTruckersReport.com, an article called No Driver Shortage Problem, Just Pay Drivers More, says economist. This one's by Samuel Baradas. Anyway, an economist at the Department of Labor Statistics. We may have already covered this thing, actually. I don't think about it. Maybe we covered this last month. That's funny, last month. Last podcast in September. Anyway, she says really there is no driver shortage. She can't find any evidence of it. She just says if you want to attract drivers into the market, they will react to wage increases. You know what? She ain't lying. As a matter of fact, I'm subscribed to Indeed.com email newsletter to receive jobs, trucking jobs in my area, even though I'm very happy where I'm at. This is the way I found my current job. So I like to keep my eye just on the pulse of things. And, I've been noticing a lot more companies that are paying a lot more. You know, a lot of companies now are advertising $70,000 to $75,000 a year, up to $80,000 a year. And boy, you just rarely saw that in the past. Rarely. So I think driver pay is coming up. Let's hope that continues. Cause boy, we sure need it. You know, drivers coming into this industry. If you make $45,000, $50,000 a year, you're doing pretty darn good. I think the national average, they said, was like $38,000, which is just pathetic. Truckers, I got to tell you, if you are a trucker, you're making $38,000 a year, you're doing it wrong. No, you're not doing it wrong. You're probably trucking just fine. You just chose the wrong company. That's all there is to it. There are companies out there that will pay you more. The Evil Overlord and I both made about 50 grand a year our first year. Of course, we were teaming, but still, that's each of us. And there are plenty of jobs out there that will pay you $45,000 a year to start. And after that, you should be able to move up the ladder from then on out. And again, I'm going to say, check out LTL if you're new to the industry, because while some of the companies are not hiring newbies, there are some that will. Mine being one of them. And we can tell. But anyway, hey, you got to learn somewhere. All right. Anyway, check out this article, thetruckersreport.com, and hooray for me for remembering the in that URL. Speaking of bad training, let's talk about CR England for a second. Sorry. Oh, I just had to go there. Anyway, I saw this article by Todd Dills over at overdriveonline.com. It's basically a link to the podcast version of this episode that I listened to. Man, it was really fascinating. Apparently there is a lady named Pam Wilson, who is kind of a babe, I might add. Can I say that? Is that politically correct? Can I call her a fox? I don't know. Anyway, she hired on with CR England about a year ago as a vice president of process development. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying she was brought in with hopes of, making their hiring process better and their driver retention better. Because, well, we all know CR England has a problem with driver retention. I mean, it's really not good. And she goes over some numbers as to how bad it was within the podcast. So if you want to listen to this, it was really very interesting. But anyway, what's so interesting about this is that not that she was hired that way, but the way she was hired, she actually came in as a new driver undercover to see how this process went. And, the article doesn't talk about it very much, but the podcast version does. This is the Overdrive podcast, by the way. Overdrive Radio, I believe is what it's called. Anyway, she goes into detail about, her whole hiring process. And this was, I guess, a very strange new world for her because from the sound of what she said, she was kind of affluent. She had been through college and had a college degree. And, well, she's good enough to get this kind of a job with, upper level job with CR England. And, so she was kind of out of her element, but she says, some very interesting stuff about, like how she didn't realize how destitute some of the drivers are when they come in, and she tells a few stories about that and just the different varieties of people who come in as truckers and, the things that they have to deal with, when they're hiring on, they weren't, maybe expecting, they had no idea where they were supposed to check in when they got to the building, for the first time, just silly things like that should be obvious, but them and quite honestly, lots of companies just don't tell you, and you just got to walk in and try to figure it out on your own. And, she was just talking about all of this and and how it helped her to understand how disrespected a lot of drivers are. And once they started making changes on that, their retention level went up quite a lot. I mean, it was like a third, I think she said, if memory serves. So anyway, if you're interested in this, check out this, check out the podcast version, but this is a really neat idea. I really wish more trucking companies would do this because I can almost guarantee you the head of recruiting, not one of their drivers knows who that is. So, they could just go back and act like they're taking the test. And they went through the driving school and everything, and the training and all that stuff. They could go back through there and they would learn an awful lot. Quite honestly, I kept expecting, her, since she's a nice looking lady, I kept expecting her to say that the trainer hit on her, made sexual advances on her, but she didn't say any such thing. Although since she does work for them, I'm not sure she would say that in a public podcast. But anyway, I wondered if any of that kind of stuff went on. Anyway, like I said, interesting concept to go in undercover. So check that out if you're interested. It wasn't that long of a podcast either, maybe 30 minutes, something like that. Link in the show notes. You know, much like recalls, it doesn't seem like we can make it through an episode without talking about automated trucks. Well, overdriveonline.com had an article by James Gillette called Tech Developers Don't Fear the Phantom of Autonomous Trucks. Basically what they're saying is autonomous trucks are coming, get ready for them. There ain't nothing you can do about it, but they say don't worry, fret too much because it's going to be many, many years before the entire industry is that way. So just like ELDs in the beginning, if you didn't like them, you could move to another company that didn't do them until they absolutely had to. But just like ELDs, eventually everybody's doing it. Well, it is what it is. The thing they were saying, though, that was kind of funny to me, they were like, we shouldn't worry about it too much. You know, the autonomous trucks are really just going to take away the long haul jobs and stuff like that. And there's still going to be lots of opportunities for local drivers. Well, you know what? We know as truck drivers, the local drivers are the ones that get paid squat. So what does that mean? I mean, we shouldn't worry about it, because we're not going to make as much money if we're not over the road. That's just the facts. They're not going to raise the pay. Let's be honest. What they are paying us for is staying on the road for a long period of time, or at least a week or something like that. The time away from our house and from our family is what they're paying us for. Yes, we are professionals and we know what we're doing, but really what they're paying us for is time spent away from the family. And that can be proven just by the fact that over the road companies where you're out for a long period of time, you can make a lot more. You go regional, most of the time that regional pay will cut down even within the same company. And then if you go local, it's even lower. And that's just the way it works. So if they start getting away with all these long haul companies where you can't stay out for a long time, and let's face it, a lot of drivers want to do that, then does that mean that pay is going to go way down too and nobody wants to do trucking anymore? I don't know. Stay tuned. I guess we'll find out one of these days. Because let's face it, just like Fast and Furious 20, it's coming someday. All right, now, I know how you all love Big Brother, right? Well, maybe not. But here's a story about it. This one's in overdriveonline.com. Tell me, would you wear a headgear, which is basically a headband strap to tell you if you're tired or not? Well, that's what Australian company SmartCap Technologies is trying to do. Apparently, they've used this system, this fatigue monitoring system in the mining industry for years, and they've been advancing it out to other industries. And it's coming to the United States. I don't know who's going to implement it, but man, there aren't going to be very many truckers that are going to go for this. Anyway, apparently what it does is it recognizes those little 1 to 10 second micro sleeps that a driver can have when they're super tired. You know, great. I'm all for drivers not driving fatigued, but wearing a headband just seems a little, I don't know, intrusive. I don't know. All of these kind of things just kind of, I don't know. You know, there's another story over here on freightwaves.com. A very ominous title. The camera sees all. Phone usage, smoking in cab now triggers driver alerts. This one's by Ben Straight. This one is basically an in-cab video monitoring system that faces, puts it on your face, and it can detect your actions. It can detect your eyelid movement, your head bobs and stuff like that. If you're, your eyelids, if you're tired, if you start, kind of jerking back and forth in the seat, how some of us will do, rock back and forth in the seat to, help keep alert and stuff like that, which, hey, I've done that, until I can get some rest or until I can get where I'm going. Supposedly all of this is going to be tracked by this device. This one's from Eyesight Technologies, and it's called Fleet Sense, by the way. Basically, but it's also going to be able to do detect other things, like it's going to be able to see whether you're wearing a seatbelt and if it's being worn correctly, or if you've got it too loose, or, if you got it under your arm, for instance, which a lot of drivers do. Or if the driver's holding a cell phone, or if they even might be smoking, which I don't know why that matters unless the trucking company has a policy against smoking in the cab, which quite honestly, they ought to be able to tell the second they step in it, when it's getting maintenance or whatever. But anyway, they can tell if you're smoking, which is kind of weird. They say it's, like they can't really like see the smoke supposedly, cause it could be vaping or whatever, but they can tell like, because of your hand movements, even, like if you're bringing your hand up to your mouth ever so often, they can recognize that as a common thing that smokers do. Again, creepy. I don't like any of this stuff. I don't like any company that has a rear facing camera. It's just sad. I know a guy, on our fleet who is laid off right now, and he went to work for another company, and they have rear facing cameras, and they are very strict about it. They just fired a 1 million miler, 1 million safe driver miler. And because he was caught on his phone, they gave him one warning, and then they fired him on the second instance. And, this friend of mine was asking, well, what do we do about music or whatever? And they were like, well, I guess you can reach down to your phone long enough to, activate a playlist or a podcast or whatever, but just make sure you keep your eyes focused on the road. And they want that phone in a mount of some kind too, which, I get it. I get the whole phone thing. But what do they expect a driver to do? I mean, I'm going to be the first. Well, I won't be the first to say, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that a driver who cannot talk on the phone to friends, family, whatever, or listen to music or podcasts while they're going down the road is going to be far more fatigued than if they could do those things. I can tell you that driving overnight. I can tell you that right now. It's just, that's the way it is. If you don't have anything to listen to, or you just don't listen to anything for a while because you're just enjoying the silence, you're going to get more tired, especially at night, than if you're chatting with somebody or listening to a podcast or music or something like that. So anyway, all these safety restrictions and everything, they're just going to drive themselves right into being less safe is what's going to happen. But who am I? They're not going to listen to me. Ugh. Onward. A minute ago, I mentioned the lack of proper training guidelines, and they're delaying them for another couple of years. Well, this was a story I referred to earlier. This one was in overdriveonline.com by Matt Cole. Werner found negligent in fatal 2007 crash, ordered to pay $40.5 million in damages. Yep, that's right. Here's what happened. Apparently, it was a trainee who did it. It says this Werner driver crossed 4 lanes of traffic and a paved median before colliding head-on with a car. And the court found both the driver and the trainer to be negligent leading up to the crash. Okay. Now, the Werner president and CEO said that the accident was a result of a brief moment of operator error by the Werner driver. The driver was not distracted, fatigued, or impaired in any way. In every sense, it simply was an accident. Okay, now here's my question. How do you go across 4 lanes of traffic plus a median and hit a car head on and call that not driver error or not fatigue? To me, that is a classic case of a trainer not paying attention, a trainee falling asleep, and just merging slowly across the highway. They did say that the median was paved. So I don't know how you do that if it's not an error. But anyway, that's beside the point. The court did decide they were liable. $40.5 million worth it. $10 million of that is just considered punitive damages, basically punishment to Werner to try to get their crap in gear. Anyway, Werner's training program says that they have to have at least 30 hours in the first 5 days where the trainer watches the trainee. And in addition, the trainee has to watch the trainer for at least 10 hours during those first 5 days. So, that doesn't sound too bad, right? Of course, I always approve more of the types of situations where there is always a trainer available in the seat right beside the trainee. That one just makes way more sense to me. But anyway, it does say that the trainee drove approximately 64% of the time unsupervised, and they had both logged 0 observation time. So that's why the courts decided to get in on this. I don't even know why I'm talking about this story other than it's just another case of Werner getting nailed. I think they had an $87 million, $89.7 million accident earlier on, back in May, I guess. So anyway, I just bring this up to point out that these training guidelines really need to get into effect, and not only get into effect, but be enforced, because like everything, if it's there, if the rule's there, but it's not enforced, it doesn't mean diddly squat. So anyway, depressing. All right, a few more and we will be done with the longest news segment ever. All right. This one, again, is from overdriveonline.com. This one's by David Hollis, called Pennsylvania Testing New Traffic Restriction Plan This Winter. All right. Most of you know last year, I know this for a fact because driver Chris Mack got stuck in it a lot. Pennsylvania had a lot of shutdowns last year. And apparently they got a lot of complaints about it. Truckers were getting fined. It doesn't say what for, maybe for parking illegally for long times because they couldn't go anywhere, or maybe for showing up late for, deliveries and stuff like that. It doesn't really say what the fines are for, but it does say truckers were fined. Anyway, they've got a new draft in place. It's a 5-tiered process that restricts travel by vehicles based on the severity of the weather and highway conditions. For instance, the first tier limits travel by certain kinds of vehicles, including some trucks, while the 5th is a complete travel ban for all vehicles except emergency response vehicles. Also, like when the first tier is activated, all trucks still allowed on the roads will be required to slow down to 45 miles per hour and move to the right lane. So basically, there's this whole set of guidelines. Link in the show notes to this article. There are 5 tiers, and the tiers are all laid out, completely in this article, so you can have a look at that. And apparently part of the problem last year too was that when they put in a trucking restriction, or, the trucks weren't allowed on the road, it was in effect immediately, which doesn't give truckers any time to learn about it. So if they get caught out in it or whatever, they can get ticketed immediately. Well, they're supposedly going to fix that. They're going to have a separate, PennDOT is going to have a separate page on the 511 PA site, where they're going to say what they're going to do and give you some time to, learn in advance. So I guess if you're going to be traveling in PennDOT, you probably need to get 511 PA. If they have an app, maybe a lot of states have their own app for stuff like this, so you can keep an eye on this. Otherwise, I don't know how they're planning on relaying this information other than, their lit signs out on the road. Anyway, hopefully this will relieve some of the problem, because I know there was a lot of pissed off truckers last year who just couldn't move because, say they were empty at the time. They could move until as long as they had a load, but as soon as they were empty, they, couldn't go anywhere. And I believe driver Chris Mack was telling me that, he wasn't that far from one of his terminals where he could go get another load or whatever, but he couldn't move. And it was, I don't remember what it was, but it was something ridiculous, like 2 or 3 days. And that's just not cool. So thankfully they're trying to address this problem, and at least they are listening. We'll see how this works. And they do stress that this is just a draft. It is not law or anything like that. The restrictions, they will give you tickets, I guess, but it's not, it's not set in stone yet. They're still working on it. All right, let's continue with kind of a weird one. All right. This one is on overdriveonline.com by Matt Cole. Driver to receive $22,500 from fleet after paying fee for service dog to ride. Okay, on the surface, that sounds pretty awesome, right? All right, this is a lawsuit filed against Transport America, which is out of Minnesota. It alleged that they violated the Americans with Disabilities Act by requiring a trucker to pay a fee to have a service dog in his truck, even though the assisted dog was required as a, open quote, reasonable accommodation, close quote, for the driver's anxiety. All right. Basically what this is saying is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is saying that employers can't charge you more for a dog just because you need it. Now you can charge more if you just want to have the dog with you, but it's discriminating against you if you have a disability and you need a service dog. Now, here's what I find a little weird about this. And, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this, honestly. I get this is great. You know, if someone legitimately needs a service animal, fine. But I think we probably all know what's going on a lot of the times here. For instance, my mother-in-law got a dog admitted into an apartment that did not allow dogs because she got a doctor to say that she needed the dog for anxiety. This dog was useless. He was super fat. I mean, he got carried everywhere he went. Okay, it made her feel better, but did she really need the dog? Because quite frankly, the dog died. I mean, she's still alive. So, I just think this thing goes on a lot more. You know, there are people who get their dogs registered as service animals just because they can get a doctor to sign off on it so they can carry them into Walmart. You know, they can take them into their salon or wherever the heck they're going, you know, and they just don't want to be without their dog. And I get that, but, you know, just don't cheat the system. If this was a legitimate thing, then good for the guy. Shame on Transport America. I'm just afraid this is going to turn into one of those things that, this guy got $22,500 out of it. I think I'll try to do the same thing. You know what? If you want your dog in the truck with you, just pay for your dog in the truck with you. It does cause extra wear and tear and cleaning on a trucking company. So just saying, don't be a schmuck. Don't be a liar. Do the right thing. All right. Next up, we've got just a real quick little thing. You remember that story not too long ago where the driver come out of the Denver mountains and he, tragically had a bad accident, taking out lots of cars and lots of people with him, because he was clearly coasting by that point. His brakes had failed and he just plowed into a bunch of people. Real sad thing. Anyway, DriveWise, which you might know is like an alternative to PrePass, I guess it implemented warning notifications in Colorado sometime back in like August, and it has now added alerts to more than 100 locations in 20 different states. So basically what this will do is when you come up on a when you're in the mountains and you're coming up on a grade, it will give you an in-cab alert on where some safe pullover places are to inspect your brakes. And it will even suggest lower your gears, and it will often show, maximum suggested speeds to go down that steep grade. Oh, and it also tells drivers where the upcoming runaway ramps are, which, who knows, maybe that could have helped that guy, plan for that. Maybe he had been out in the far left-hand lane. We don't know what went on up that mountain, but, maybe he was in the far left-hand lane trying to be in the fast lane, because he had lost his brakes, and we don't know. Maybe he drove right past one of those, runaway ramps because he just couldn't get over without killing somebody. So again, we don't really know, but anything that warns you about, mountain grades and things like that can't be a bad thing. Anyway, apparently this is included on any grade that is higher than 5%, and it's in 20 states. I could read them all to you, but if you have the system, I'm sure you'll see it. And if that interests you, if you were thinking about getting the service, that might actually be a feature that interests you to get you interested in DriveWise more than PrePass or one of the other ones. So, like I say, quick story there. Last one. And lastly, let's end with some hopefully good news. This one's on overdriveonline.com. Could Colorado's pending vehicle booting regulation be a model for the nation? This one's by Todd Dills. We all know about the booting problem, right? Where, a truck is trucker's out of his truck for a few minutes. It gets a boot put on it. The people want $2,000 to release it, $650, $1,000, whatever, some crazy amount that makes no sense whatsoever. Well, Colorado is trying to make some legislation on this, which is appropriate since apparently they are the state where the Denver boot was first built and used in the middle part of the last century. So it was designed there. So good for them for being the first ones to come up with some legislation on this. So basically what this is going to do is the most important thing is it's going to prohibit booting or immobilizing an occupied vehicle. So basically they are going to have to, if somebody's going to boot your vehicle, they have to come up and knock on it first and try to get your attention. Now, I know I've reported a story on here before where, somebody was reported that they just barely knocked. One guy who actually booted trucks for a living was told to actually just go up and barely knock so he can say he did it. That's not going to wake up a trucker, especially if the truck's running. So that's a skeezy move right there. But anyway, that's what they're trying to do. And they're also putting a statewide cap on the removal fee to be $120. And it's a maximum of $25 if the vehicle's owner actually returns before the boot is completely installed. Now, all this would be great. It would be even better if the U.S. just got involved in this. The U.S. Congress got involved in this and just made this countrywide, but they haven't shown any interest in it. One of the guys that's in charge of this and has really been, well, not in charge of it, but he's really been fighting against this stuff, says, Congress is just completely uninterested in it and he can't get anybody to pay attention to it whatsoever. So unfortunately, if Colorado does get this bypassed, they're hoping it will be like a, example for the rest of the states. And, they'll all jump on board eventually, although, there's 49 more states, so it may take a while to get this all done. Another concern is that there is a loophole. They didn't write this to be very complete. As a matter of fact, they didn't even actually point out that it's for, big trucks specifically, although it is big trucks are included in all vehicles. But it does not say anywhere in there that these booters can't use what are called barnacles, which are devices that suction to parts of the vehicle, usually the windshield. You'll see a big plate of steel across the windshield, and it's suctioned down there and it can only be removed by the technician. So hopefully they will add that to the legislation and, hopefully that's been brought to their attention and they will get this taken care of. Anyway, that's hopefully some good news for truckers in the future because, it just really sucks to go into the Walmart or something like that. And you come back out, 10 minutes later with some supplies and, your truck's booted. And now, it's $1,000 to get rid of it, and the guy's just standing there because he knows you're coming back out. It just sucks. Glad it never happened to me. Yeah. Anyway, I think that about does it for the news. Thank God, right? Whew. All right. I guess since your feedback is the main topic of today's show, even though the news was much, 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 much longer, I guess we should play the intro.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right. I know you want to hear everyone scream at me about my tailgating podcast, but I'm going to save that for later because they're so fun. Oh, let's just bring up the end of the show with a bang, right? So for now, let's get on with the civilized people. For instance, Charlie. Charlie writes, Mr. McCann, ooh, I feel respected. He says, glad I found your podcast. Better than Talk CDL, in my opinion. Ooh, ouch. All right. Well, sorry about that, Troy and Johnny Acid, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who like your show better than mine. Anyway, he goes on. I need a little advice if you have the time. I'm leaving active duty Army in 10 months. I'll be getting my CDL Class A this summer or fall. I spoke to a local fuel tanker company about hiring newly licensed drivers. They said typically no because of the insurance cost, but once I have my CDL and endorsements, come by the office to talk to see if I'd be a possible hire based on driving history, etc. I think they might be leading me on, but I'm going to give it a shot. I have a spotless driving record, and my 2 bargaining chips are I don't need their health care, and I would be willing to work the first month for free while training. I'm going to keep that last one in my pocket initially. Is there anything else I could do to try and get my foot in the door? I know the typical rookie route is to grind it out for at least a year with a major carrier and then look for a better job, but I figured this is worth a shot. My alternate plan is to go to TMC to flatbed. On a different note, on a recent episode, you asked how guys are trained on military trucks. All units at the lowest level should have a master driver. The master drivers are mid-career enlisted soldiers. They conduct several days of training that includes left seat and right seat driving. The training will accumulate with a check ride. If the driver passes, that model of vehicle is added to the driver's military license. Now, I don't drive much, but it has given me a good basic knowledge of air brakes and basic maintenance on cat turbo diesels. Well, that's enough rambling for me. Thank you for your time. Hope the new job is working out well. New job's working great, Charlie, as you heard earlier. Lots of miles, lots of money. I like it a lot. And of course, Charlie, thank you for your service. You know, one of my biggest life regrets is that I never served in the military. Oh well, it's too late for that now. Nobody's interested in a slightly fat, graying, older, bald guy who can't do 25 push-ups very easily. And thanks for the military truck training information too. That's definitely welcome after, all the confusion a few episodes back. Appreciate your insight on that. I don't think this fuel company is leading you on necessarily. Typically, trucking companies set minimum hiring requirements for themselves. One of the criteria is usually your amount of driving experience. And that's usually based on what their insurance company approves of, so they really aren't lying there. However, if they're a small company, they might actually have some wiggle room for you there. And I can't help but think that your military service is going to be a plus here too. But these large carriers, they probably won't bend on the rules for you. It's just too set in stone. They either hire students straight out of driving school or they don't. One thing's for sure, though. Pretty much every trucking company in the United States is hiring, and they're desperate for drivers. So if you got a good driving record and they can figure out a way to hire you, they're going to do it. The thing you're missing, and the thing insurance companies desire, is verifiable truck driving experience, and unfortunately, that's the part you're missing. And when I responded to Charlie, I pointed out some military programs offered by the FMCSA. If you're a veteran looking to get into trucking, be sure to check out this link. I'm sure your military service probably told you about this, but just in case, you might qualify for something here. So go check out this link. It'll be in the show notes. As for that bargaining strategy you got going on there, well, I've never heard of a driver not needing health care, so I can honestly tell you if that's going to help you. And like you said, I would certainly hold off on offering to work for free for a whole month. The only other things I can think of is to have everything at hand that they might want, like any military licenses you have. Go get an MVR, motor vehicle report from your DMV. That way it shows you have a clean driving record. And you might also try to get a written statement from your personal insurance company that you're accident free. That would always help too. But again, I'm just spitballing here. I'm not really sure because I've never really been in this situation before. When I came in, I was fresh and new. The fact is, most companies have basic hiring requirements. Smaller companies might be willing to fudge it a bit, but all the large carriers, including that TMC you're talking about, they're likely going to require either verifiable driving experience or on-the-job training after some kind of truck driving school. Now, if you do have to go the traditional route, which I know you don't want to, but if you do, you could do much worse than TMC. They've got a decent reputation for training newbies compared to companies like, CR England and Swift, guys like that. Whoever you go with, shoot me an email and let me know who it is so I can maybe weigh in on it a little bit. Some companies just need to be avoided. I don't like to usually mention their name, but when it comes to training, I'm not saying anything anybody hasn't said a million times. Now, I'm curious about one thing. Why are you so eager about getting on with this particular fuel company? Is it a local company? Do you know someone who works there? What's the attachment? And I ask this because new drivers in the trucking industry often get fixated on a particular trucking company, basically because it's the only company that's actively pursuing them. Or maybe one of their drivers is talking you up about it or something like that. As a newbie, it makes you feel wanted, and therefore you form an attachment to the carrier that's based on emotion, not logic. Now, I'm not saying that's going on here, but it does happen a lot. As a matter of fact, it happened to the evil overlord and I when we first started. Luckily, we got emotionally attached to a company that wound up being pretty great. Sadly, often the carriers that pursue you the most are the worst companies to drive for. You know, they're more eager because they can't get good drivers. Another thing you might want to realize is that you don't have to work for a company based near your home. Now, if you're going over the road, most carriers will hire you even if you live 100 miles away, even 1,000 miles away. Anyway, keep in touch and I'll continue to help if I'm able to. Best of luck with your oncoming new career. I think it's great you're asking all these questions ahead of time. That bodes well for your success in this industry. And our conversation continued. Charlie writes, I have always wanted to go into trucking. Over the years, I've been talking to truckers as I met them. They move a lot of our stuff when we move within the U.S. My latest conversation was with an in-law who works in an adjacent state who hauls a tanker. That's what led me to searching and eventually finding this local bulk fuel company. This niche of trucking, based on my research, appears to pay well, and it's not out of the norm to be home daily, but most of the time, as you know, they want 1 and sometimes even 3 years experience. That prerequisite by most companies is why I was skeptical of them telling me there might be a chance. It's a one-way relationship right now. I don't need health care because I will be getting that through the Army Reserves. I figured it might save them money if I offered to not be on their plan. Thank you for the insight that I frankly haven't heard before and your sound advice. And I wrote back to Charlie to finish this up. It's understandable why tanker carriers often want drivers with experience. Those liquid loads can have some squirrely effects on how the rig handles. I was hauling a dry van full of totes once with some sort of liquid in them. The pavement was wet, and when I thought I'd stopped at a stoplight, the liquid all shifted forward in their totes and shoved me forward a couple of feet. It scared the crap out of me. And those were just totes. A large tanker has more liquid sloshing around, so hey, it's best you know what you're doing. One thing to note about tankers is that they might pay more within a company being the key words here, but not necessarily across different carriers. What I mean is that, say, Carrier X has multiple divisions such as dry van, tanker, and flatbed, then undoubtedly the tanker or flatbed would pay more than dry vans because it's more work. But it's all relative. There might be a Carrier Q down the street that would pay you more to drive dry vans than Carrier X will pay you to pull tankers or flatbeds. Here's a real-life example of that. My last employer paid me 57 cents per mile to pull dry vans. I'd see advertisements all day long for flatbed or tanker companies where I'd only make 48 or 49 cents a mile. So, like I said, it really depends on the company more than it does the type of trailer you're hauling. And I told him that it would probably be a good thing for a new driver to get into the Slack groups and possibly the Facebook group. And he did. And when he wrote back, he said, Todd, that all makes sense. Thank you for breaking it down. Between you, the Slack group, podcasts, and talking to drivers, I'm drowning in information. It's great. Thanks again. I'll be in touch. Well, thank you for writing in, Charlie. I appreciate it. And thank you for kicking off this feedback number 3 episode. You know, sometimes the funniest emails are the shortest emails. This one is from A. Hitler. I don't know what that means. I guess it's a joke. I don't know. Anyway, this one was on my product review of the WeBoost Drive 4GX OTR cell signal booster. And it simply says, you're trying too hard. Okay. I don't know what that means. But anyway, it's good to know. I'd rather try too hard than not try at all. Next up, we hear from Michael. Michael writes, I never notice all the noise you hear. I am always driving something while listening. I'm thinking you're at UPS. Well, I don't say who I work for, so you're either right or you're wrong. Even if you're not, I work in a bid system. Depending on turnover and retirement, you can get to the middle. He means middle of the seniority list. If you leave, you will start resenting your over-the-road job. When you get paid for everything and go home or to a hotel, truck stop life will make you feel like a third world person. If you can make it a year, you'll be fine. After 12 years, due to various things, I am the top driver at my terminal. Some of the senior guys only want so much work and more home time. Plus, summer is coming, so there's likely to be more runs and freight. Most senior guys have a lot of vacation. That is the other thing they get first choice of. Good luck, Todd, with your new job and the podcast. Well, you know what, Michael? You're exactly right about the audio. I used to complain about it a lot. I don't so much anymore because I finally listened to you guys. So you were probably listening to one of my older episodes where I was still whining and complaining because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Anyway, this is all great insight on over the road versus LTL, and you're spot on about all these things. It's just like you said. Now that I'm here, I look back and I kind of resent some of the things I wasn't getting paid for on over the road, or, like when I drive by a truck stop at night and I'm looking in there and I'm seeing all the crazy parking going on and I'm thinking, man, I don't have to deal with that anymore. Thank God. Recently I got paid for these holidays, which I never got paid for before, and I didn't have to work them. I have worked jobs before where they'll pay you for it, but only if you're working, and it's not very much pay, quite honestly. And this pays quite well. So there's things like that. And then, you talked about how the senior drivers, they don't really want to work that much, and they'll take as much vacation time and home time as they can. And that's been true. I've seen that over and over. And you're right about the summer's coming, and there are more runs and freight. Although, like I said, there are people laid off here where I'm at. It's not affecting me at all, man. I'm just going hammer down. So anyway, Mike, thanks for writing in. Appreciate your feedback as always. Next up, Bert writes, I am a retired military SGM and part-time gunsmith. I don't know what SGM stands for. Does that mean Sergeant Major? I don't know. I'm clearly not a military dude. Anyway, Bert goes on and says, just starting out in trucking to see if it's potentially a path I could take next. I'm not good at doing anything. Well, don't say that when you're trying to get into trucking. We don't want it. If you're not any good at it, don't come out here and risk my life. Dude, what's up with that? He says, my wife and I have accrued bills we want to pay off and get her on short final to not working so much. She's a nurse. I grasped the concept of how recruiters work. I was in the military and was lied to and kept going out of morbid curiosity. Yeah, they do lie quite a bit. Anyway, he goes on and says, right now I'm being courted by, well, everyone, but let's say retirement did not go so well. I fell into a cycle of alcoholism, and destructive behavior during which I received a DUI. Strange being on the other side of the table. And Jesus bailed me out, always does, and I haven't had a drink in 3 years, but I believe after Colombia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and thousands of airborne operations, my guardian angel has finally started. Yeah, your guardian angel's in high gear. He goes on and says, I had 3 months of GI Bill left after completing several degrees and went to Roadmaster truck driving school. Right now, I am looking at Werner and Schneider. Eventually, we do want our own truck to haul local equipment and mainly be available to move relief supplies and equipment to disaster areas. My great passion is volunteering to do rescue and recovery operations at my whim. Any input on my two suitors? Should I move along? All comments are close held. And I wrote to Bert, thanks for your service. Man, appreciative every soldier that listens to this show. Well, and every soldier that doesn't listen to this show. So anyway, I don't have any personal experience with either company, either Werner or Schneider. So it's just really hard to voice an opinion on it. I am thinking you should have more options than just Werner or Schneider. Maybe it's been too long since I've been in the industry, but I would think you'd have more options than that. Anyway, it's been quite a while since I tried to get a trucking job with a 5+-year-old DUI. I was in that exact same situation when I started in 97. But, I'm sure there are more companies than these two carriers who would accept you since your DUI is 5 years old. You're just going to have to make a lot of phone calls to find a better opportunity. Although being new with little or no experience is hurting you too. But we all started out in your position. When it comes to reputation, I'd say Werner and Schneider they're about the same. They're not great places to work, but there are far worse places to start your career. I'm sure you've already heard of Swift and CR England. All I have to say about that is run, Forrest, run. One thing to think about is that it's extremely easy for a newbie to get fixated on a trucking company if they're actively pursuing you. Didn't I just tell Charlie that earlier? I did. I'm just giving the same advice over and over again. Anyway, I will point out again that in my experience, the best carriers aren't finding you, you're finding them. Ultimately, you already realize your options are limited due to your lack of experience, and it's even more limited by that DUI. In the end, sometimes you just have to work for a lesser carrier for the first year. I think if you had asked any experienced trucker, they'd all say that their first trucking job wasn't all that great, and it was probably their worst. However, once you put in your time, you'll have a lot more options. And he writes back, I appreciate the feedback. I'm relying really on instinct based on my military service. As for the thanks, he says, hey, you and the wife and the rest of America are all worth it. Yeah, we are. He says, I'm not expecting a whole lot, and if it gets too squirrely, I can walk as I have my retirement and disability, which, after I pay off all of my bad choices, I am keeping separate from the whole trucking and gunsmithing thing. So my wife and kid can have a few luxuries like food and shelter. Those are luxuries. Like this guy. Kim, great woman, bad taste in men. And I discussed it and deemed the trucking thing more viable than contracting and disappearing for years on end. We feel 2 to 3 weeks out or more days in a row. Home is a better option than the weekend home deals. A lot of the companies I've spoken with want 3 to 6 months over the road experience, and the DUI is not that big of a deal. I'm getting a Twix hazmat and tanker endorsement. And he says, as a part-time fire rescue guy, I understand the whole shifting load thing with our tankers. He says, I'm getting those endorsements because, well, why not? Ideally, I would like to haul for the units I used to be in on Fort Bragg, which would require hazmat and a lot of hot shot stuff. Thanks again for the input. Stay safe and God bless. He says, P.S. Does she really have fangs? He's referring to Trucker Dump episode 100, where I have a picture of the evil overlord. And sometimes I think she does have fangs. I'll let you know if I ever find any weird bite marks on my neck and start noticing I'm building a sensitivity to sunlight. Anyway, Bert, I'm glad the DUI isn't coming into play that much. I remember being super worried about it when I got into the industry. I did get a few rejections right up front, but most were willing to look past the 5-year mark. It's also a smart move to get the extra endorsements. There's no sense in disqualifying yourself for a good job simply because you're too lazy to already have the needed endorsements. Now, we'll like to say that a lot of companies will let you get the endorsement afterwards or say they'll give you time to get it beforehand. But, sometimes those jobs, those good jobs, they need you real quick. And you don't want to have to go messing with, studying and getting endorsements when you can already have them. So good move there. Anyway, Bert, good luck with all this. Keep in touch. I think I might have another email from you later. Yeah, I do. Let me go ahead and knock that out. Oh, I made a comment about Mack trucks. He says, so you being new and maybe buying my own truck in the future, what's the deal about Mack trucks? I don't see many of them around. And you said in your podcast, you didn't know many Mack drivers. Well, Bert, like I said, I don't know much about any trucks, let alone Macks. So I'm just not much of a gearhead. I'm not sure why big fleets don't buy them more often. You know, maybe it could be the price, could be there's not enough dealers to service them, could be reliability, could be something else. I don't know, honestly. I just don't know anything about trucks. If I ever had to buy one myself, I'd have to get a lot of help because I'm useless when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now, I did have one friend, Shannon Holden, used to have a Mack that he drove, and he loved the thing, but he's been upgraded. Well, it's brand new anyway. It's a new Freightliner, and he's enjoying that one now too. So anyway, if you want advice on a Mack truck, you're going to have to look somewhere else. Sorry, can't help with that, Bert. Next up, we got a different Michael who has another shorty. He says, not a truck driver, but I love the podcast. Audio sounds fine. Man, I must have really been complaining about audio back in the day. I know I did. That was, he listened to Trucker Dump 137, over the road trucking versus LTL trucking. Wow, that wasn't that long ago, so I guess I was still complaining about it. Anyway, thanks for writing in, Mike. Anytime somebody writes me a message, any can just drop a note of any kind. It always makes my day. I love it. So please send in your feedback. Just say hi. Next up, we got Bill. Bill listened to Trucker Dump 33, automatic or manual truck transmission. He writes, Todd, good post on trannies. I had my own truck, a 96 Kenworth T600. Nice. For several years. Sold it last year as I'm close to retiring. I was unaware the industry had moved over to automatics. I did drive one for a year when I was teaming with my ex. I don't need a reason for justifying my preference for a manual transmission. I just do. And my preference for a manual transmission is strong enough that I'll happily turn in my CDL and give up truck driving permanently. I see this trend for vehicle autonomy pointing the way to a future where we exist in a bubble watching reality TV and playing video games. No thanks. No more fuel lines for vehicles? Fine. I'll get a horse. I'm not a Luddite, but I do value resourcefulness, ingenuity, and free thinking. Not so big on the welfare mind state where everything is done for me for my own good. That younger driver in Colorado who lost control of his truck and killed 4 people, was he driving an automatic? I don't know. That's a good question. When I started driving, not that long ago, the old timers assured me you can drive down a mountain hundreds of times too slow, but you're only going downhill too fast once. I took that sober advice to heart and learned how to downshift. Cheers. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on this, Bill. I don't get the holy war going on between manual and automatic trannies either. Like you said, it's just preference. And while I agree that automatics do pave the way for autonomous vehicles, I also think there's something to be said for just making things easier. Think how much safer a newbie would be if they could concentrate on safe driving instead of figuring out gear patterns and RPMs. Now, I realize old hands like us can shift without really thinking about it, but not everyone can do that, especially in the beginning. My friend driver Chris Mack has over 10 years of driving experience, and he had to switch to an automatic to stay leased to his company. And he thought he'd absolutely hate it. But after 3 days of seeing how well the truck handled shifting, he was sold. Says he'll never go back now. So again, it's all a matter of preference. And we continue this conversation when he writes, Todd, I thought about what you said regarding making things easier. And when I reflect on that thought, I realize that easy isn't necessarily better. Our dad raised us old school, and one of his favorite sayings when he had us doing things we didn't particularly care for as children was, it builds character. Of course, at the time I found that sentiment just annoying, but as years have passed, I think I understand what he meant. I hated school. It was boring. The teachers didn't motivate me, and it was a long time before I realized I actually loved to learn. I'll be 68 this year and can say truthfully that nothing worthwhile that I've learned, accomplished, or attained in my life was easy. But it was by challenging myself and overcoming difficulties that I am who I am today. I believe there's an existing crisis going on in America today, and Senator Ben Sasse's book, The Vanishing American Adult, does a good job of addressing this. Thank God our dad forced us to build character, and I'm a better human being because of it. Is it possible that there's a better way to learn? Definitely. I taught myself to play the violin as an adult. Cool. I heard that's a hard instrument to play. He says the only reason it was difficult was because I thought it was. And what does that mean? I think we're only limited by our beliefs, and many of those oftentimes popular beliefs are simply incorrect. Our old man taught us, you are what you think. I just read Wayne Dyer's autobiography, I Can See Clearly Now, an amazing testimony to the truth that we are what we think. Before I read his autobiography, I really didn't know anything about him other than he was a motivational speaker, but I'm so grateful that he did what he did so that anyone who aspires me to be more than just mediocre can know all the things that are possible when we believe in ourselves. Many was the time I felt like quitting, throwing in the towel, but the way I was raised didn't allow for that, and I'm so grateful I was raised that way. I'm never going to stop learning, no matter how difficult and steep the learning curve. I'm going to continue to challenge myself and aspire to be more than I was yesterday. The other option, which is to just coast easily to the graveyard, isn't acceptable. Thanks for bringing this subject up, as it helped me to see clearly. Wow, Bill, that was a great email. It's so easy to read. It's so nice when people put in punctuation. But Bill, for the most part, I agree with you. Easy is not always the best, but I'm still not sure I agree with you when it comes to automatics and manual transmissions. Sure, learning to shift a manual properly is a skill and a character builder, but does it really help a person to be a safer driver? That, I think, is the goal, isn't it? If a rookie driver can be a safer driver because they don't have to worry about shifting, then I think that's better for everyone. Granted, maybe that wasn't the case back in the day of the early automatics, but nowadays they're so good that there's not really much of an issue anymore. And before we go down the path of an automatic fail, yes, it could, but you can also manually shift every auto transmission I've ever seen or heard of in the truck if you get in a pinch. I think one thing where automatics do fail is when driving schools use them to train. If you're training in an automatic, your schooling can be a lot shorter, which means you're spending less time on the road driving with a trainer before you actually get your license. And that, I think, is a major flaw in the system. The driving schools could solve this just by keeping the courses longer and giving the students more time behind the wheel. But they're all about the churn and burn to make more money, so sadly, that's probably not going to happen. But hey, Bill, thanks for the email. It's appreciated. And so well written. Nicely done. Next up is Justin from Australia. Wait for it. You know it's coming. G'day, Todd. You knew I was going to do a bad Australian accent. You knew it. He says, Justin here all the way down south, Australia. I've just obtained my heavy rigid license. Not sure what the American equivalent is. Anyhow, I've been in warehousing logistics for over 10 years and just recently looking at changing my career as a truck driver. A 53-year-old newbie, LOL. Won't be interstate work, just local work. When I find the job that suits, that is. Mate, love your podcast. It's very informative and humorous. Even though the terminology you guys use is different and the way you do things are slightly different, it's still great to listen to. Love the fact that you affectionately call your wife the evil overlord. Anyway, congrats on your new job and thanks for putting your podcast out there. I wish we had a good trucking podcast here in Australia. Yeah, I've never heard of a podcast. I think there is one out of there, but I think it might be... No, I don't know. I thought it might be related to some kind of trucking station out there or something. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. I am glad you're enjoying the podcast, though, Justin. I know you're probably the second or third Aussie who listens, so that's really cool. And I'm really happy that at least some of it relates, even though the verbiage isn't the same. I think your heavy rigid is what we call a straight or a box truck. Obviously, I'm not sure the licenses have the same requirements, but they probably do. Anyway, Justin, thanks for writing in. Always appreciate your thoughts. Next up, we've got Jim. He listened to Trucker Dump 109, Coping with Rookie Truckers, and he wrote, Captain Krabby Pants sure loves his mirror and doesn't want to get it scratched. Yeah. This is a guy sitting back there watching a rookie back in and just honking the horn. That's all he was doing. He wasn't helping. Anyway, he goes on and says, the truck tires were already between the lines, which is something I said. So honking loudly wouldn't really help. He's just making noise, especially if he can see he was blocked and had nowhere to go. Anyway, got a good laugh out of the part where you mentioned, quote, thankfully, I'm not a germaphobe, else I'd have been freaking the heck out. That truck was nastier than a Nicki Minaj video. Well, hey, Jim, Nicki Minaj videos are pretty nasty, are they not? Okay. Here's a quick one from David, who listened to Trucker Dump 101, Stupid Rules That Truckers Tolerate. He writes, how about those shippers that say they'll prosecute to the fullest extent of the law for pulling from a dock with a red light without telling you to pull up? I laugh at that. I literally Google for hours trying to find something about legal actions they could possibly prosecute for, and that wasn't one of them. Excellent point. If anybody has ever been prosecuted for pulling away from a dock or any other stupid rule that a shipper receiver has posted, I would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about the absurdity of it. All right, David, thank you for the laugh. Appreciate it. Hey, here we go. We got some more feedback on military driver training. This one's from Ken Easy Money from Pittsburgh. He says, hey, Todd, in response to your military driver's training comments, I might have a little bit to add. I was a senior master driver, trainer, and tester during my 22 years in the U.S. Army. While it is possible to have the first military sign-off be for a large vehicle, that is not the norm. This only happens when a driver is needed for a specific mission and only if they have prior experience and a civilian license to drive large vehicles, either Class A or Class B. Most of the time, drivers first get their license in a Humvee or four-wheeler equivalent, especially if they don't have any prior driving experience. After quite a bit of training, they will work their way up to the large vehicles. Now, I can't speak for every situation, and mission often dictated a change of policy, but this was the way I performed my training and testing. Well, that's awesome, Ken. Thanks for the clarification. And who to get it better from than somebody who's in charge of the whole process. So that's really awesome. And of course, thank you for your service. The Evil Overlord and I appreciate it very, very much. God bless. I'm thinking I should have segmented these things together because I have another one on automatic or manual transmission, Trucker Dump 33. This one's from Eaglewind 357. He says, Buster, the good old days are gone. In some way, that's too bad. And to hang on to the integrity of some of those days is a good thing, but to be critical of things or people that are hopefully making life better and more understandable is only hurting yourself as well as in the eyes of others. This is a great, very good, informative, eye-opening blog. Thank you for sharing open-mindedly the info and knowledge you have on this subject. Well, thank you, Eaglewind. I appreciate it. Again, I have no idea why there's such a vendetta against automatic transmission, but it is what it is. You can't talk common sense into some people. So anyway, Eaglewind, thanks for sharing your thoughts on the subject. All right, next, let me just give a few shout outs to some people who wanted to join the Trucker Dump Slack group or the Facebook group or both. We've got Mike, we've got Kyle, Casey, Driver C, who we're going to hear from here in a bit, Eric, Daniel, Jeremy, who happens to be from Nova Scotia, Canada. So that's cool. Always hearing somebody from outside the States, and Josh. So anyway, thanks to everybody who joined that group or one or both of the groups. Sometimes those people are still active. Sometimes they are not. If it's your bag, it's your bag. If it's not, then it's not. Life's too short to go chasing down people who don't want to stick around. It is what it is. Let's move on now. Speaking of Driver C, let's get to her email. She says, hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing good at your new job. Yes, I am. She says, I'm a rookie driver. I've been on my own for 3 weeks and listening to your podcast. I started from 0 all the way to your last one, and I'm getting your book as I type this out. Oh, cool. It's helped me in many, 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 many ways. Okay, just to thank you and give you a little info. I went through some stuff this week, not that good. Maybe this will help another rookie driver. I drove 300 miles to Ohio, dropped off the load. They told me to pick up an empty trailer. I picked up the trailer, drove 20 miles and they told me to go back. Boy, that's happened too many times. She goes on. I drop off the trailer back to where I got it, and I drive another 20 miles to pick up a different empty trailer in a small Ohio town, very difficult to maneuver. So I get back from picking up the empty trailer, dropped it off, and picked up a new load. Now, this is where everything goes wrong. I only had 1 hour left on my 14 hours, so I plug in the GPS to take me to a Flying J. I made a right-hand turn, and it started raining very hard, and it was windy, and I could not see anything, so I slowed down about 20 miles an hour. All of a sudden, I see a road sign, road closed, and now I can't make a left, and I can't make a right, and it's a small two-way lane. I can't back up because it's too dark, so I decided to go all the way to the right and try to make a U-turn, but of course, I get stuck because it's raining, it's dark, and I can't see anything. The cops came and tow trucks came. They got me out, but could not turn me around, so it's still raining. It's dark. I can't see anything behind me, so the police got behind me and lit up the road for me to back up. It took me more than an hour to back the truck up and get out of there. But as I was backing up, it was raining so hard I could not see anything, even with the cop giving me light. Oh, and by the way, I got myself a nice big ticket. Yeah, of course. Just a little story. Maybe it'll help a rookie driver so they won't make the same mistake. I should just probably have pulled over on the dirt shoulder and stayed there until daytime and then tried to back up, but I decided to make that stupid move. I don't really email much. Sorry for the missed grammar. Just wanted to give you that info. Oh, you should write a book for rookie drivers. And then she asked for her Slack invite. Well, driver C, basically the book Trucking Life is for rookie drivers. It will give you some tips and tricks and stuff like that, but I don't really know what to tell rookie drivers. I do have a book coming out soon that will help them. Hopefully it'll be soon if I can ever get to it. It will help them, but it's not specifically designed for them. Stay tuned for more on that. That is one heck of a story. It sucks, but this is not something that just rookies do. Sometimes experienced drivers, they get in the same type of a situation. They make a stupid move because they don't want to sit around and they take a risk, an unnecessary risk, and they get screwed. Sometimes it just goes that way, and you live and learn. I've written 2 podcasts or done 2 podcasts on complacency among drivers. So it's a common thing, for drivers to just get comfortable with their skill level and then they turn around and they screw up. So anyway, we're all human. Sometimes we don't think clearly. Just don't let this discourage you. We all make mistakes. Just live and learn from it. And thanks for writing in, Driver C. Appreciate it. And thanks for joining the Slack group. Appreciate it. Oh, and she writes another one. She says, hey, Todd, I heard you say briefly that I-9 drivers is not good or scary or something like that. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I started with a small company and it's I-9. What should I be expecting? Thank you. I think what she's talking about is 1099 is what I was talking about. The thing with 1099s is it's scary because these companies entice you with a large cents per mile. What they don't often tell you is that they're claiming you as an independent contractor, meaning they don't hold out any taxes. And that means you have to budget really well and plan to pay those taxes. Usually you have to pay them quarterly even. All too often, drivers just don't realize how big that tax bill is going to be until it's too late. Also, I don't think the employer is paying anything towards your Social Security, so that's going to really stink when retirement comes around. Basically, I just think these companies are shady. After all, an independent contractor by definition can work for anyone they like, but I'd be willing to bet that this company won't allow that. It's even likely you'll be driving their truck, so exactly how is that being independent? Now, there has been talk of the IRS already starting to crack down on this kind of stuff, so I'd just be careful working for them. I don't know your situation, but if I could get out of that and work for a carrier as a normal employee, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Now, if you're going to stick with this company anyway, please make sure you talk to an accountant ASAP and be sure you're holding out enough taxes and setting some back for your retirement. Personally, I don't think the amount they give you is high enough to make up for the rest of that stuff. It really isn't. So thanks for that, driver C. That was a really great question. Yowza. I was thinking this episode might be a little bit easier because I just had some news, although a lot of it, and feedback. But boy, I was wrong. I think I've been recording for about 7 hours now, so my voice is shot. I'm shutting it down. And besides, all I have left to cover is all of the mean emails. And I want to be nice and fresh for that. So, okay, I'm out of here. Talk to you in about 2 seconds. Well, it's been exactly 2 seconds, and after a long winter's nap, I am back. My voice feels better, I think. On a side note, earlier I was talking about how busy I've been with my job and how I've been around lots of miles. I haven't been laid off. I haven't been left at home like a lot of people say happens. Sometimes they just don't have loads and you end up sitting at home. Well, for the first time, it actually happened. So here it is Monday. I was supposed to go out and it didn't happen. Load got canceled. Me and a bunch of other people on my board. But this time it wasn't actually, it's not just low freight. It was low freight caused by bad weather. Apparently a lot of customers canceled, pickups today because of the bad weather. There was ice and snow on the ground. And, so a lot of city drivers didn't get to pick up a lot of freight. And so they were able to consolidate it on to just a few trailers. So just some of the people at my board went out last night. So anyway, this was a night off. Not sure how I feel about that. It's kind of weird. I get an extra night off, but it's going to be a little bit shorter paycheck. So it is what it is. That's going to happen with this job, I was told. And it happened for the first time. But on the positive side, that means I'm fresh and ready to go for what you've been waiting for. And that's all the mean emails that I get regarding my tailgating episode. Wow. I was just reading through here. If you want a good laugh, if you want some angry people, go over to Trucker Dump 95 and check that out. You'll have to go to the website at abouttruckdriving.com, TD95. And that is the one called 4 Reasons That Trucker Might Be Tailgating You. And as a lot of people put it, I'm justifying tailgating, and I'm not really, that was not my intention with this. I was looking, I saw a lot of people on the internet were looking as to why people tailgate or why truckers tailgate specifically. And I thought, I'm going to answer that question. And a lot of people looked at this article, a lot of non-truckers, I should say, and actually some truckers also, they said that, I'm just justifying tailgating. And I would like to point out that my definition of a tailgate is, 2 to 3 car lengths, just enough to make someone nervous. I put that in the article, but apparently a lot of people overlook that. And anyway, they're just very angry. I'm going to save the best for last because it is a real doozy and I'm going to have to do some translating. I'll warn you that if you got kids listening to this, even the translation might be a little, I don't know. You just probably don't want them to hear it. Anyway, I'm going to start with some of the nice ones though. Well, they're probably still not happy, but at least they're civil, whereas a lot of these people are not. Anyway, let's start out with, Mrs. B. She writes, I have to agree with John and Caressa. Okay, this is 2 other people who disagreed with me, of course, in these comments. So she's adding on. She says, my car is 13 years old, and not only does it take a while to get up to normal speed, it frequently hesitates to where I try to speed up again, but it revs up to like number 5 or 6 very loudly and still struggles to get back up to 60 or so sometimes. This would be a reason for my varying speeds. Well, first off, Miss B, I understand that a crappy car is a crappy car, but just because you have a crappy car does not mean you need to be holding up traffic. Anyway, she goes on to justify this. She says, I cannot afford another car. I understand that. But I have places I need to get to, and before you tell me to take the bus, I've already been there, done that, and smelled that. P.U. Have you tried going on a trip on one of those? No, I've never actually ridden a bus, but the evil overlord has, and she swears she'll never do it again. So I hear what you're trying to say. And she says, so I tried to stay away from those. Don't blame you. And no, I do not have family to take me. Also, you get better mileage going a little slower, and there may be other reasons, rain, snow, darkness, fog, that may cause me to drive slower. The young people out there don't slow in these conditions, and they wonder how they ended up with their car upside down. That is, if they come out alive. Some states have a maximum and minimum speed displayed, such as 70 and 45. If there's nothing wrong with going a bit slower, especially for safety reasons or some other important reason, I see nothing wrong with it. Even if I didn't have an old car, I could have a newer car that, unbeknownst to me, may be on the verge of recall, suddenly develop a problem and stall, etc. Also, I don't understand the comment about if you're going slower, get out of my way. I don't know what she's talking about there. I don't know what comment that was. I read back through the article and I wasn't really sure what she was talking about, unless she's talking about when I say drive safe and stay out of my way, which is just kind of a joke. It means I got crap to do. Please don't get in my way. I've got things to do, crap to deliver. That's kind of a joke. That's not a get out of my way or I'm going to tailgate you thing. If that's what you meant, Miss B. Anyway, let's go on. She says, she goes on and says, are you telling them they should get out of the slow lane? Because I thought that's what it was for. It is what it's for. I guess I just don't understand. Why not just go around us? Well, I will, honestly, if I'm allowed to. Some areas I am not allowed to get out in that left-hand lane, and I am stuck in that left-hand lane as a big truck. So that may not be an option. And then, of course, when we get out in the left lane, people yell at us also. So we either stay in the right-hand lane or we get out in the left-hand lane and piss people off. Anyway, we really can't win as truckers. She says, maybe there's something I'm missing. Well, you're not a trucker, so there's probably, a lot you're missing about it. Anyway, she's awful nice about this. I'll give her that. She goes on and says, also, tailgaters don't seem to realize, especially in a car like mine, that my old car could hesitate at any time. And if they are not leaving enough space, that can cause a problem. They have anti-tailgating laws for a reason. Besides, even when I'm able to go the speed limit in the slow lane, I still get tailgated. I was going 70 the other day, which was the speed limit, and a big truck who was only allowed to go 55 tailgated me. What am I to do then? They want me to speed up? Are they going to pay for the ticket? I have no speeding tickets, and I don't plan on having any. If I can't afford a better car, I certainly can't afford a ticket. You know, Miss B, the thing with this is, I kind of like the way the Germans do it over there. Of course, it's the Autobahn and there is no speed limit, so it's a little understandable, but they will actually ticket someone who is slowing up. If somebody is out in the left-hand lane, it is their responsibility to get out of the way of anybody who's going faster. Now, I realize this is Germany and the Autobahn. This is not, American interstates, but it's kind of the same idea. I don't know if anybody's coming up behind me at all and I see them going faster, I try to get out of their way. Now, maybe that's the difference between truckers and cars, because truckers are trained to check their mirrors often. We're told every 5 to 8 seconds. Most truckers don't do that, but we do look in our mirrors a heck of a lot more than the average car driver does. So, if we're looking back there and we see somebody coming up behind us, we try to get out of the way typically. Most good drivers. Most good truckers will, I'll say that. Not all. Just like car drivers, not all truckers are good drivers. Some of them are real jerks. And by the way, that was number 4 reason of why that trucker might be tailgating you in my podcast, is that maybe the driver's just a jerk. So I did cover that basis at least in the podcast. Anyway, she goes on. Where I live, most highways only have 2 lanes in each direction. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't get into the fast lane because it's already packed with speeding cars and they don't want me in front of them either. Some of the highways here only have 1 lane in each direction, which makes it even worse. I drive many miles to school every day down the same highway, so that someday I can improve my situation and get that better car. Well, good for you. She says, but I live in a rural area with extremely poor bus service. I got to do what I got to do, and I got to get where I got to get. It seems people don't understand what the slow lane is for, or did they secretly get rid of it and forget to send me the memo? No, they did not, Miss B. You sound like you got a good head on your shoulders, and I am sorry. If a trucker is tailgating you, it does suck, But if you're, like I said in the podcast, if you are varying your speed, it is very annoying to a trucker, especially if there are hills, because we have this momentum problem. You don't understand where our vehicle weighs 80,000 pounds, and it takes a while to get it moving. It takes a while to get it stopped. So, if you're varying your speed, you can gas on it as soon as you realize you're slowing down. Get out of the way. We gas on it, and our trucks do nothing, especially the speed limiters, the ones with speed limiters. It takes just a long time to get up to speed. So anyway, Miss B, I do appreciate your comments and your thoughts on this, and I thank you for being kind with your thoughts. Next up, we got a short one from Rhonda regarding, of course, the tailgating episode. She says, no, this is your problem, your all caps. If retards like you aren't smart enough to use an alarm clock, then you deserve to be held up. Nobody's trying to get you to your unimportant destination, so deal with it. Well, that was short and sweet, Rhonda. And that is part of the problem. Nobody's trying to get me to my important destination except for myself. You may not think it's an important destination. Well, it could be, or it couldn't be. Maybe you don't think me delivering a load of ramen noodles is all that important, but you have to remember, if I miss my appointment, they can sometimes delay me hours, if not an entire day, to set up a new appointment. So it kind of is a big deal for us because that's money out of my pocket. Now, I would also have to point out that everybody's out for themselves, right? And I'd be willing to bet, Rhonda, that you are too. If you wake up late, which quite honestly, most truckers don't wake up late. That's not why we're in a hurry. It's just, traffic or whatever. Most truckers leave plenty of time to reach their destinations. But again, I would ask you and challenge you that if you are on your way to work and somebody gets in your way, are you real calm about it? Do you ever tailgate? Do you ever dodge in and out of traffic to get moving closer towards your destination and to reach your destination on time? Well, if you can honestly say that, then good for you. You're a much better driver than me. Thanks for your input, Rhonda. Next up, we've got a short one from Tori. She writes, if you are driving an 18-wheeler, you are driving a giant weapon. You may not be able to speed up very fast, but you also have a crappy stopping distance. If I have to brake for a sharp curve or a deer, you will probably kill my children and me. So don't be surprised if I call your company and or the police for putting my children in danger. Well, Tori, that's certainly your prerogative. I have nothing else to really say about that one. She is true. We are a giant weapon. And that is again why I said that when I tailgate, it is a get close enough to make you nervous, not ride your bumper. But again, most people are just going to call that justifying. Okay, it is what it is. Next up, we've got Mark and Tim, elders. They or him or whatever. That's a weird name. He says, Todd, if a truck driver tailgates, that is bullying. And buddy, you have no right to endanger a car driver's life just because you spent too long flirting with the waitress at the truck stop and now you're late with your delivery. Well, first off, Mark, I hardly ever eat in the truck stops and I never flirt with the cashiers or the waitresses because I am a happily married Christian man, so I'm not going to do that. So bad excuse there, but I get your point. He goes on. He says, it's not my problem as a car driver obeying the speed limit in the far right lane, the slow lane, that you or any truck driver can't or won't learn how to be on time. Todd, if your wife or child was in the car in front and some truck driver tailgated so close it would kill your family if that car had to stop, would you still take up for your fellow truck driver? And if you say, well, my wife would never drive the speed limit or below, then you are just trying to avoid giving an honest answer. No, I'll give you an honest answer, Mark. I would not be happy if a truck was following the evil overlord that closely. But quite honestly, if one is driving that close to her, she's going to get out of their way. Because guess what? She used to be a truck driver, so she knows. If even if she sees that she's doing nothing wrong, she's not stupid enough to stay in front of a truck, no matter what. So, there's that. If you want to be stubborn, put your life in risk, then hey, whatever, that's your choice. He goes on and says, and here's another tidbit of truth for you, Todd McCann. While it may be true that most 18-wheeler drivers are always on time, always drive safe and respect other traffic, it is also true that there are more than enough dangerous truck drivers to keep injury attorneys in business round the clock in every U.S. city. Todd, you and other truck drivers have zero right to tailgate ever, and one day you might bully some car driver who carries a gun and really does not like being tailgated. I'm just saying. No, you're right about that, Mark. I have made that point in a different podcast. Don't remember what number that was. But I made that point. Is it worth it to confront other drivers about things out there? And that included other car drivers and other truck drivers. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I guess we just have to be the judge of that. And as for those injury attorneys that you addressed, yeah, there's a lot of them. And yeah, they do advertise everywhere. But why is that? Because the trucking companies have the money and that's where they're going. Now, I have no proof or no evidence of this, but I would be willing to bet just on percentage wise of how many cars there are compared to how many trucks. I would be willing to bet good money that there are a lot more attorneys that handle car injuries and car accidents than there are that go after trucks. And there's probably a lot more lawsuits going on between two car drivers than there are than a car and a truck. But again, you go where the money is. Why do you think they can afford all those billboards? In case you missed earlier in the episode, the minimum liability that truck drivers can carry, independent operators anyway, can carry is $750,000. And those truck attorneys know they can go straight after that money. It's just sitting there waiting to be used. So there it is. Thanks for writing in, Mark. I appreciate your comments, even if you're not happy with me right now. Now, here's an interesting one from an anonymous person who calls himself, "You are a jerk, Todd." Well, that's interesting. He even used an email address, "You're a jerk at getbent.com, which doesn't exist. So he's smart enough to at least make up a fake email address. Just love the anonymity. How do you say that? Anonymity of the internet. Anyway, he says, "Todd, it's a speed limit. Get it? I can drive anywhere between 40 and 70, and there isn't anything you can do about it except be a dangerous jerk or pass. You are putting people's lives in danger and are bragging about it. Hopefully, this little English lesson will prevent you from killing someone." Oh, well, an English lesson. I can respect that. I'm always doing that to people. First off, I'm not bragging about it. The reason I wrote this article was because, like I said earlier, I saw people on the internet asking, why is this trucker tailgating? That's not cool. And I just wanted to give some reasons so people could actually get on there and see why that trucker might be tailgating someone. And remember, number 4 is that he's a jerk, because we have jerks just like car drivers have jerks. And I would like to point out, too, that when I'm talking about varying speed, us truck drivers, if we're on an interstate and somebody's going 45, 50, 55 mile an hour, we're not too worried about it because, even the speed limited trucks can go at least 60, usually 65, sometimes a little bit faster. But that's not a problem for us. We can get around those people. It's the people that, if we're going 65 and we're limited at that, and you're going 65, then you're going 60, then you go up to 65, then you go down to 63, then you go to 60, then you go to 65, and you're all over the map. Those are the annoying ones because we're constantly creeping up on you, constantly backing off. Most truckers honestly love nothing more than if a car will just get out of their way, like for instance, when you're coming on an on-ramp, if you are right beside us and you gas on it and get out in front of us and you're gone, we're happy about that. We don't want you being all cautious and sitting there beside us and expecting us to scoot over for you. That isn't what we're looking for. You gas on that thing, we're happy. You use the acceleration that you have in that car, something that we cannot do. So anyway, I do appreciate the English lesson there. You are a jerk, Todd, and nice name. I appreciate the humor in that. And now we're going to hear from a truck driver named Kevin Carter. And he writes, "I agree. I'm a truck driver myself, and I've never found a reason for tailgating. If it was your loved ones in the car, would you like it? Other trucks ride my tail because I'm governed at 65. When they pass, I have to back down just so they can get in on Highway 35. Kevin, as a fellow professional truck driver, I appreciate your opinion far more than I do the average car driver. But again, pay attention to this next answer that I have for Jungle Jim here, and I'll address some of these issues. So let's get to Jungle Jim. He opens up with, man, F you. Okay. There's no logical reason for a trucker to ride up so close on the back of a car that if there's a sudden stop, there's not enough distance to prevent running up on top of you. I drive according to the flow of traffic and always leave a buffer between me and the car ahead of me, especially if I see taillights forming far ahead of me. So if some idiot trucker doesn't have enough of an IQ to put a similar distance between himself and my car, weight plus speed, then he shouldn't be on the road or should be shot for riding onto people. Okay. If he gets in a wreck, he's going to miss his appointment anyway. And you always hear about these bastards jackknifing, rolling a gas tanker, or getting smashed by a train or some poop. Evidently not the brightest group on the planet. Well, hey, Jungle Jim, if you've ever listened to this podcast, you will hear me say multiple times that truckers are often not the brightest group on this planet. But hey, there you have it. Anyway, Jungle Jim, I would just like to note that, there's really nothing I love more than being told F you right off the bat in an email. It really opens up a line of communication that shows you can carry on an intelligent conversation. Anyway, let me address this. First off, I'm amazed by how many drivers, both car and semi, say they always allow plenty of space between them and the vehicles around them. And this goes for Kevin too. Really? Always? You know what? I don't buy that for a second. According to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, a tractor trailer is supposed to leave approximately 7 seconds of following distance in 60-mile-an-hour traffic. Now, I challenge anyone to hop into a semi and try that even in moderate traffic. It simply can't be done. If you slow down to leave 7 seconds, one or more cars will fill that gap quicker than you can say Shazam. Likewise, cars are supposed to follow 3 seconds. Now, I'll challenge you again. Try this. When the car you're following passes under an overpass or a landmark of some kind, start counting. I'd be willing to bet you'll drive past that landmark before that 3-second lapses. Now, having said all that, Jungle Jim, you're right. There's no logical reason for a trucker to ride so close on the back of a car that if there's a sudden stop, there's not enough distance to prevent running up on top of you. Quote, then again, there's not very much logic in a four-wheeler driving with his nose in his phone, or cutting across 3 lanes of traffic to get to their exit ramp, or going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, or driving slower than the speed limit, or even, wait for it, tailgating a trucker. Yet, these are things that take place every day. Any trucker can tell you that. As for the truck wrecks you spoke of, yep, you hear about truck wrecks all the time. That's because they're reported by the media. If the media reported every four-wheeler accidents, well, there wouldn't be anything on the news except car accidents. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll admit that. I wonder if you're aware that stats show that over 70% of accidents involving a car and a truck are caused by the car. Yep, it's true. Some studies show as much as 90% the car fault. The average trucker drives between 125,000 and 150,000 miles per year. If we had as many accidents per mile as four-wheelers do, just imagine how clogged the roads would be. Again, you are correct. In an ideal world, I'd never have to tailgate a four-wheeler in order to do my job. But here in reality, we sometimes need to, and that is what this article is trying to explain. Because while there are definitely jerk-faced truck drivers out there, there are certainly far more jerk-faced car drivers out there. So as long as we're talking about fantasy worlds, let me tell you mine. It's a world where there are nothing but big rigs on the road. Tell you what, let's do an experiment where there are no trucks on the road for an entire day. There would still be cars having accidents everywhere. Now reverse it and take all the cars off the road for 24 hours. I'd bet good money that there wouldn't be even one single truck wreck. Just saying. Anyway, Jungle Jim, thanks for writing in. I do appreciate all the feedback, even if it does open with a personal attack. We truckers have been disrespected by the public for many years, so why should that change now? Next up, we hear from Earmuffs Kids, Dickwad. Hey. Oh, anyway, hey, he called himself that. I didn't call him that. I felt a little weird writing back to him, but hey, that's what he called himself. What do you want me to do? So anyway, Dickwad says, 4 reasons that trucker might be tailgating you. Maybe they're running late for a meth pickup. My favorite is when they clog up the road by passing each other going 1 mile an hour faster. Well, you know, dickwad, wow, that's mean. It may come as a surprise to you that the vast majority of truckers hate that 1 mile an hour passing thing too. It's only a small minority of inconsiderate truckers who do it. And that's a good thing because the roads would be clogged for days on end if most of us did it. I actually wrote an article, did a podcast about this, called Truckers Go Turtle Racing. Check out Trucker Dump episode 66 for that one. As for the meth comment, well, a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration study showed that only 1.5% of all truckers tested positive during random drug screens. Now, I think we both are willing to bet that the percentage among the motoring public is likely much higher than that. It's a common misconception, though, about truckers, so no hard feelings. Hope that informs you a little bit on this. Anyway, dickwad, thanks for taking the time to write in. Cheers. And I've saved the best from last. Gary. This one's going to take a little bit to get through because, well, I'm going to have to do some translations. Again, kids with the earmuffs. All right. Gary writes, here's what I think. I pray that your wife or husband, from the sounds of your insecurities demonstrated by your overly aggressive mannerisms, making up for the fact that you pay trannies at the truck stop to treat your Vienna sausage like a lollipop, and they're in front of the next tailgater just like yourself. Or better yet, how about your wife and daughter, who is probably already having sex with Negroes at the ripe old age of 12 due to her abusive truck driving, self-hating closet fag of a father, be the ones stuck in front of a prick truck driver as yourself. I pray to God that sleeping around wife and daughter of yours is in front of a prick, no other word for that, just like you, and you have to see them scraped off the ground you drive on. Hopefully this happens to you. Hopefully this makes you raging angry and you effing lose yourself as those little sleeping around women are exposed and scraped off the very ground you drive on. I'll be there to crap on their foreheads, you small Vienna sausage, useless piece of dung. So fat you can't see your own little Vienna sausage. So gay your wife is having sex with the same Negro your ugly, skanky bag daughter is having sex with. Fat F, which with the capital B. Wow. That probably didn't make a lot of sense because, wow, that was a lot of anger. Wow. You know, I just have to laugh at these things. You know, I've always heard that when you have a presence on the internet that you're going to get trolls, and here they are. You know, we could have had a intelligent conversation like some of the other people, you know, like, Rhonda and Miss B and Tori, Mark, you know, some of these other people had some decent conversations, but no, we got to go to name calling and hoping that my family dies. By the way, Gary, I don't have kids. So there you have it. The thing is, though, you know what? I'm just really not affected that much by these trolls. When I first read these emails, it makes me kind of angry because they don't know me, but they think they know me. The thing of it is, I find all this insulting to me. I find it funny because if you noticed, Gary seems to be angered at my supposed man-centric statements, all the while proceeding to rail with all sorts of rage and name-calling towards women, gays, and African Americans. That's a brilliant bit of irony there, isn't it? You know, I'm the horrible person. Here we go. I just hope Gary gets some help with all that pinned-up anger. I'm sure he's really safe on the road, and he probably never tailgates. That'd be my guess. All right, for the last email of the day and my last bit of feedback, and I'll be all caught up, let's go to a different subject. You know, every once in a while, it's fun to get called a bigot or a racist or something like that, right? No, it's never fun to be called that, but, you know, every once in a while, I get it. So this one is from someone calling themselves Cracker. Okay, so you can guess this has to do with race. All right. They listened to Trucker Dump 105, 4 reasons truckers don't have butts. And they wrote, "You're one ugly, uneducated, racist cracker, which with a capital B." Okay. Now, what they were referring to, I honestly could not remember for the life of me what I said. And so I had to go back to the article. And again, this is the one where I'm talking about, why truckers don't have butts, and I'm using reasons, kind of funny reasons like truckers freeze their butts off, truckers sweat their butts off, truckers work their butts off, truckers talk your butt off, things like that, just kind of a funny little play on the words there. Anyway, this is what Cracker is talking about, this paragraph right here. I wrote, "Other people's butts aren't so great. My sister Angie has told me for years that I have a cracker butt. She's right, and I know it. My butt's so flat, it's almost concave. It's also appropriately white like a cracker, just as it should be. Sorry, guess I should have issued a TMI warning there. Oh well, no taking it back now. And for the record, my sister is allowed to use the word cracker because she's a white girl. Kind of like black folks can use the N-word, but no one else can. Funny how that rule isn't reciprocal. One of these days, that whole racist thing is going to have to work equally both ways." Well, now, that was a little tangent I didn't expect. So anyway, and I went on with the rest of the article. This was what they were talking about when they called me a ugly, uneducated, racist cracker, which with capital B. Okay. All right. First off, isn't it kind of racist to call a white guy a cracker? Just saying. All right. So here's my question, Cracker. What about what I said is wrong? See, the way I look at it, black comedians call white people crackers or other derogatory names all the time. Yet you never hear a white comedian calling a black person an N-word. See, right there, you're living proof that I can't even use the abbreviation of N-word without someone calling me a racist and a cracker. I asked my nephews about this, who are far more hip than me, and I said, "Can Eminem call black guys N-words?" And they say, "Oh no, he got a bunch of crap about that. He gets criticism for saying the real N-word." And my point is, if the blackest white guy in the world can't do it, well, I guess no one can. So again, if black people can call me a derogatory name, but I can't call them one, which honestly I don't want to, who's the racist here? Just saying. Boy, I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot of comments on that. Probably not a good way to end this episode. But anyway, as I said, thank you everyone for your feedback. I am finally freaking caught up. Oh, I'm so happy about this. Now the problem is I don't have any feedback for the January episode. So make sure you write in. I'm sure somebody will have some comments about me being a racist or a bigot or something, right? No, please don't send me those. I don't like those. Send me something on something we talked about or something you just have on your mind. I just appreciate anything you send me. Of course, I always love audio comments because, nobody wants to hear me ramble on for hours on end, which it looks like this podcast is going to be a doozy. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Thank you again to everybody who stuck with me through this hiatus. I do appreciate it. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. If you aren't following me on Twitter and, if you're not in the Slack groups or the Facebook groups, please consider doing that. All of that information can be found at abouttruckdriving.com. I've got a subscribe page there. I've got a contact page there. All that junk is right there. So again, I really appreciate everyone sticking with me. I appreciate Volvo for sticking with me and working with me on this. So let's finish this bad boy up and get out of here. So what are your thoughts on these feedback episodes? Do you like them or just tolerate them? Shoot me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com or give me a shout on Twitter where I'm at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. Remember, all my contact info can be found at abouttruckdriving.com, as well as the show notes for this episode, which is episode 140. And of course, you should check out the 25% off combo pack for the books Trucking Life and How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job. And maybe even consider giving them to someone in your life who has a really crappy job. Well, I guess we'll talk again next year. As always, I appreciate you listening and telling your friends about the podcast. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Well, we're back from a wee bit of hiatus. Hey there, truckers. Hey there, trucker dumpers. Hope you had a great. What am I talking about? What's the name of that holiday? Oh yeah. The thing is, you have to specify. It has to have a name. It has to be specified, and that's not explained very well. Which is kind of ironic, considered none of my articles are such thing. They're more like a meranding. What's the word? More like a what? Meandering. That's the word, meandering. Anyway, of course, all of these bills are being opposed by the, Of course, all these bills are being opposed by the, all these bills are being proposed. As with most things, when California starts something, everybody else starts jumping on the bandwagon. And he wrote back. To finish this up. And I wrote back to finish it up. Saying, and I wrote back to Charlie. It's understandable why And I wrote back to Charlie. It's understandable why a tanker. And I wrote back to Charlie. It's understandable why tanker carriers often want. Oh, good God! I swallowed a turd or something. Ugh. Being sick and podcasting sucks.